Okay, it's letting me back in.
All right, we are live, guys. Welcome back to another week of In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. We are stoked and excited to have a special guest this week, Luna Stower, on with us, all the way from California. We're going to be talking a lot about marketing, business, development, everything that nobody talks about in cannabis, really, right? Because we're all worried about medicinal and CBD, but how do we get there, right? So Luna has a lot of experience. We're really excited to bring her on board and talk to you guys about what she does, how she does it, what are some of the tricks of the trade that we should be focused on, and a little bit about what's going on in Cali. I want to say thank you to all my other guests. Our co-host, Chef Rodney's back, Deliciously Dope TV. He'll be giving us another great strain of the week. It just gets better and better every week. So big shout out to Chef. Then we also have Thomas Marcombe, which is our veteran now, who's got about as much in the weeds time as anybody now. He's back with our Growers Guide this week. We're going to have another great Growers Guide for you guys. If you guys missed last week's Growers Guide, you can find it up online. We have YouTube. We have the WeTube. And what was the other one we got? The
Master Cannabis.
Right? So these are all new video platforms that you can find In the Weeds, Prohibition Talk Radio at, and all of our segments and our shows. Last week we talked about making candy. So the holidays coming up, guys.
Oh yeah.
Candy, some infused candy. Thomas had a great segment last week. Chef brought us a great strain of the week last week. So guys, go check those out on our Facebook pages, our YouTube pages, all those fun places. And while you're there, subscribe.
Share, like, subscribe, the whole nine.
Yeah, we're there. And we're also going to have Timothy Fair on hopefully at some point today. I know he's kind of busy doing law things and all sorts of crazy stuff happening in Vermont right now. So he's full speed ahead. So go legalization in Vermont. We're stoked to see that finally happen. We're catching up to the rest of the world again. But now we're going to talk to Luna. So we have Luna Stower on. She, again, has a list of things and products and things that she's done. Working with a couple agencies right now, corporations, on marketing, right? So Luna, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, and how you got into cannabis?
Hi, y'all. So yeah, I'm Luna Stower, and I'm based here in Oakland. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Smoking weed, everybody. Happy 420 on the East Coast. It's a little early here on the West Coast, which is the best coast, but we won't go there.
It's never too early.
Right. It's 420 somewhere, literally right now. Yeah, I'm born and raised Bay Area girl. I, was in middle school when Prop passed, which was, a really important time for us. It was when medical became legal in this context of collectives. And so, everyone around me was growing, slanging, curating, and doing everything that they could to kind of just make it work for their patients and their families. And so I never really grew up thinking that it was a drug. It was always something that was just kind of in the medicine cabinet with, wherever you would see other tinctures and things like that. So, I never got into the profession of cannabis until obviously trimming, procuring, brokering in the 215 era after college. I was really focused on teaching. I got my master's at USF in urban education and social justice, and was working in charter schools and unionizing teachers. And the whole time, obviously putting myself through my undergrad and my graduate school, my credential program was through working in Trinity County up on farms, organic farms up there that were a traditional market that have now become, licensed in 64, but not everyone made it. So I kind of feel really glad that I've been able to see, and was working for Jetty extracts during Prop 64's passage. So I've gone from kind of the medical only 215 world into the Prop 64 world with licensed medical and recreational caregivers and licensed manufacturers, distributors, labs, and retailers. So I feel really lucky to kind of have seen the brand side, the cultivation side, and have done a lot of work in our local city government, making sure that equity owners were getting a fair shot at business ownership and low interest or no interest loans and some capital and first in line for investments and things like that. So I've been really active in the decriminalization of entheogenics and mushrooms movement in Oakland as well, really banging on the doors of City Hall for cannabis and all plant medicines for the majority of my adult life here in the Bay Area. So I just, through being an event planner and, going to all the conferences, I've just gotten really deeply embedded into a lot of the different trade organizations, a lot of the different brands, retailers, publications. I'm also a published writer through all the different dope magazine, Cannabis Now, MG Magazine, High Times. I've been featured in Forbes and CNN, and just kind of been the ferry that's floating around the industry in California and beyond, really bringing what I've learned to women's health products in Israel, working with folks in Canada, working with folks in Mexico, and really around the whole world, really as a consultant for all things cannabis. So I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. Long live radio.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So,
I mean, that's a huge backstory, right? I mean, that's a lot of stuff. You've been blessed with the actual legalization for a while, right? Because you're on the West Coast. For us here on the East Coast, it's fairly a new thing, right? So, I mean, with all that, now you have your marketing and consulting agency, right? You have a great website. You have for all these great things. What's the thing that's driving you right now the most?
Yeah, if anyone's on their devices, they can check it out. It's just my name.com, lunastower.com. It's really, I think that my biggest thing is just access to the medicine and education, right? So it's like, creating video content, connecting brands with nonprofits that work with veterans and ill people to make sure that they're able to give away, now that we did all this work passing SB 34, the Brownie Mary Compassionate Care Act, making sure that, brands really are able to, kind of limit the amount of noise in the marketplace and just really focus on give back and really focus on corporate social responsibility. So that's something that I've been really active doing, through my marketing agency, also helping launch the Dennis Hopper's pre-roll brand, Hopper Reserve with Fiorello Co., which they're a creative 8 branding agency in LA. And then most recently, I've been hired on to work with iSpire at getispire.com. They're an amazing new revolutionary vape cartridge hardware that is leak proof and has 2 coils instead of the 1 traditional coil. They've been in the vape game forever. They actually invented the first ever e-cig vape over 10 years ago. They have hundreds of patents in China. And so they brought me on because they're finally breaking into the THC and the CBD world. So my territory is Northern California. So if you know any people who are making cartridges that really want, something unique that's, pretty much the most cutting edge in the market, because there's nothing worse than being a brand and spending all this time and energy putting all this time into making beautiful terpenes, and you put so much marketing energy into talking about the processes and the retaining of the flavors and what the terpenes are and all this education. We're put so many eggs in that basket around consumer education, and then you pour it into a cartridge that's nickel plated, or that is going to leak, or that doesn't have a unique design, or like the C-cell cartridge monopoly that everyone loves, but they also hate because it's been the same technology for 4 years. I mean, the last iteration of it was in 2016-17. So we're really looking for something that's kind of going to push the movement forward, not just from like a Chinese technology perspective, but literally what's the best way. If you're serving gourmet food, why would you want to heat up a beautiful soup on a little tiny burner? You'd want multiple small burners heating up the delicious soup, and you want to serve it in beautiful cookware. It wouldn't be something that you would want to just like dump into a plastic cartridge, or something that has a wick that burns, or something that's off-gassing metals. So we're really trying to bring that sophistication and that polish that we have from the consumer packaged goods side of the world really into cannabis, and making sure that it remains safe. Because if you guys remember in October, the E-Valley incidents of the vape deaths that were happening from the illicit vapes, and also contraband, or the fake counterfeit vapes that were making it into the licensed market, people were dying from it. And so the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. The people like us that had been screaming from the rooftops for years to get rid of that of the nasty e-juice and the vape industry, we got tossed in with that. So we went from being the top selling category in cannabis in October to November being the lowest and being taken off of all the shelves. So really, I think that my role now I aspire to really be that liaison between the medical market and the CBD market in the United States, and in California in particular.
Oh,
so California doesn't have very good internet.
well, I mean, she brings up a great topic. And she uses a great time frame, because I mean, again, a year ago this time, vapes were the number one thing, right? Everybody has one. Oh, exactly. We got her back. Yeah,
I was actually just surfing the net yesterday, and I don't actually have Facebook, and I don't know if it was Facebook algorithm or just coincidence, but the iSpire ad popped up with their new cartridges, and I actually spent a good share of time yesterday, probably a lot more time than I should have, looking it over and just looking at their cartridges. And they definitely seem to be, top of the line products. So it's pretty cool to see that Luna is helping them with that venture.
Well, now we're talking about a new technology with 2 coils, right? And like Luna was saying,
my next question.
We really need to focus on in this industry because I think it's the number one industry that it went from number 1 to where literally right now nobody even wants to talk cartridges. They don't even want to ask about them. It's just like they were never existed kind of out
It's a dirty
here.
word.
Yeah,
in our market
goes
right
with
now.
The whole throwing the bathwater out thing. Like it's funny because like I used to love carts. I used to love them. Go pick them up, and for what I did at the time, it worked out great because no one wants a chef walking up to their table smelling like ganja. You know what I'm saying? Like let's face it, the customers can do that all. But it's a lack of professionalism, and I get that. And so carts for me were like boom, boom, boom. I loved it. You could go on the walk in, take a couple puffs, and bring service on. Let's do this. And
How do you think I got through teaching middle school?
yeah, the girl, my boss asked bitches.
Thank fucking God for cartridges. And the kids all smoked weed, so you couldn't come in with like weed crumbs on your hands from rolling a blunt.
Yeah, exactly. Or like resin on your lips or whatever, because that's constant for me. But no, when that whole vitamin E thing came out and it started killing people and popcorn lung and all of that, like I dropped vapes and I just stopped giving a shit. And I noticed like it was funny because the more that like I smelled like weed, the more people would be like, "Hey, can you cook with that?" And I've got my chef coat on. I'm like, yeah. It's just another ingredient. There's some stuff you have to know. There's a lot more to it, but I'm going to make it sound easy because to me, it's just cooking. It's just, it's just been that way. But like, yeah, it's interesting. Like watching that happen, it was terrible because my friend owns a company who makes his own vapes. So I'll definitely have to put you in contact with him. So I appreciate the kind of like reach out for that. I know he does already do some California business, but let's see if either you know him or you can get to know him really, because I know he's got a problem with him leaking. He hates that.
Right, absolutely. And so like the way that we designed it is that it can't escape. Okay. So there's kind of a wiggle room where it's like it can only go one direction, but it can't keep traveling. So yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of kind of waiting until the right time to come into this market, is because we've seen the ups and downs. We've seen the trials and tribulations, and I've been there. I mean, I was at Jetty Extracts I was like employee number 5, and was laid off when they had to lay off their basically the entire company, because of, what was just happening with COVID and before COVID and all that stuff that was happening. But it makes sense that, like I've been in the lab and seen people have to go through iterations, the issues with the filling machines, the issues with, with the BCC too, with our Bureau of Cannabis Control. In order to consider them safe, they not only need to test the oil and the cartridge, but they need to test the oil once the oil is poured into the cartridge, and then they test it again after it's been sitting for several weeks to see if there's any leaching. And now they're actually testing it once it's being vaped to see what happens once there's heat introduced. So we're talking about, quadruple, 5 times, 6 times testing just to get it to market. And that's not even to say that the buyer is going to put it on the shelves, or that the distributors, it's going to be affordable to use them to distribute it, or that you're going to have the marketing dollars to actually be able to push it in the B2B and B2C spaces. So it's been hell. It's literally been hell. I mean, I would say, just like we saw in Colorado, Washington, and Oregon through their legalization process, stages of mass extinction events of brands and companies. I would say 9 out of 10 that I used to work with, back in the 215 era are completely gone. And I would say, of the ones that lasted through, VapeGate and were like kind of on their feet in January and February, they were obliterated due to COVID. And a lot of our retailers, I'm sure you guys heard about the looting that was happening during the protests. Unfortunately, during that time when the police were focused on the looting and the protests, there were organized crime that was unrelated, right? Not related to BLM. These are not Antifa people. These are, organized criminals that were waiting for a time to be able to, know that the alarm would be going off and that police would be out, at the protest not coming through. So we lost probably 20 local dispensaries that have said that they're going to open back up, but it's been 8-9 months and nothing's happened. So it's really scary and sad right now, because everyone's seeing that people are buying more weed than ever, but are they buying it from the legal market? Probably not. Why? Because unemployment's higher. People are at home, they're able to kind of drive over to their old dealer and get it. Like, why would they go into a club or order delivery and have to do with a delivery driver, or go into a physical space, or maybe they're not even open. So it's interesting that sales are up, but it's kind of like everyone's kind of like brewing their own booch in the bathtub, so to speak. Like, I grew my own for the first time in a few years here, where I am. And like, I'm a busy ass woman, but like, I'm doing it because everyone's back to the earth, back to baking their own bread, back to planting their seeds, back to figuring out where they're getting their spring water from. It's kind of shaken everything up to be like, all right, I don't want to pay for weed anymore. We were talking about this earlier, right? We said stoners are always late to everything, and unless it's a giveaway, right? And I was like, because we always want to get free shit because we're either spending all our money on weed or smoking all of our weed. And it's no joke, like during this time, anxiety and depression are at an all-time high. People are looking for escapes and for numbing and for disassociation because they're nervous about the election. They're nervous about there's tensions for folks of color and women who are losing their civil rights by the day and being murdered in the street like animals. There's this underlying trauma that's constantly triggering us. And I've personally, I'm sure I would be interested to hear from you guys too. I've consumed more cannabis since COVID than I probably smoked on average in the past maybe 5 to 6 years. And I'm a heavy consumer. Like I probably consume 4 to 5 times more per day than I did. If I smoked once or twice during the day, I'm smoking like every couple of hours. So, and not always smoking, just hitting the pen or like, using edibles more often. And I think that it's really, an amazing time for cannabis now to be considered this in its own vengeful way. Like, yeah, we are an essential business, right? We get validated in this weird time of crisis for being this important thing, not only economically, but to actually soothe the nature of why this is so stressful. So it's really on us. And I think that it's, we've been practicing for a long time. We've been having the conversations, creating anecdotal data around medical use and efficacy. So now that the time is here and we're pushed on stage in the global spotlight, like the nation is moving towards legalization. It's part of the global debate and all of these things that are happening. And it's really kind of up to us, and the impetus is on us, no pressure, of course, so like really not fuck it up and do it right and decriminalize in the right ways and tax and control it in the right ways, and educate in the right ways. So that's like my whole shtick.
That's been our pitch here for years, right? Education, and you get to know what your plan is. I mean, you brought up a really good point that we talk about a lot. Like right now in this day and age, we are breaking records every day in legal sales that we know of, that we track, right? Like every month, it's a new record. And the fact that we're all at home now, we're on this lockdown, we have the stresses, like you said. Everybody's cannabis has shot up, and now we're seeing alcohol sales are dropping, which is interesting, right? We're seeing cigarette sales dropping. We're starting to see these companies really start to shift gears, especially in this time of need, because they see money here, right? So what's that say to our illegal markets, right? You're in California, which is one of the most interesting things, because their policing out there has been crazy the last few years, right? Going after the illegal market. Their taxations out there are ridiculous. So for somebody in California right now to get medicine, right, it's going to be way cheaper to call your neighbor, right? And like you said, the greatest thing I've heard so far is that you're like, it's way easier to call your neighbor right now than go to the dispensary, even with curbside, right? But that opened up a whole new world of sales for us during being considered essential. So now most patients in most states can get access to it somehow, right? Every state is a little bit different. We're still working on a lot of different things. We have delivery now in Massachusetts, so big shout out to that. That's something that's fairly recent, where they're setting that whole structure up. You guys are in a weird flux right now in California, right? Now, one thing I want to talk about is a vape. We kind of blasted through that whole vape thing, right? Tons of information out there. It totally, the market flipped on its head. Do you think we can get that back though? I mean, we're all sitting on the show talking about how much we love vapes, how much we really care about vapes, but how do we bring that market back where people actually feel safe purchasing and consuming? Should it be, a recommendation that you only legitimately buy it from a retail establishment, a dispensary, a company that that they're making their own products? How do we get that market back on its feet? You know what I mean? Because like you said, nobody talks about vapes anymore. You know what I mean? And it's really interesting because now everybody's smoking back to flower. And like Chef was saying, and you guys are all saying, like, it's way easier to go to the movies, out to dinner, perform, do quick things, hit that vape in the back hallway somewhere, because no one's really going to notice. I smoke blunts otherwise. Like I'm a walking Christmas tree, right? So how do we do that and keep our stigma proper, right? Like, because I mean, again, like a lot of these are stigma relatable issues, which happened with that vape game, right? Biggest hit to our industry we could have really ever had, because the industry was really on a trajectory at that point of it didn't really derail us, but like like you said, it's a big chunk of your industry gone, and now you're working for a company to bring it back. How do you bring it back? What do we do? Like, how do we break that stigma?
Excellent question. And I think that it's an existential issue that we're facing across a lot of different levels right now, is how deep people actually want to go in understanding things. So how comfortable are we educating ourselves and not just going with the headline and the clickbait? So a quick funny story before I answer that. So I mentioned CNN. So CNN came to Jetty Extracts and interviewed me and did all this B-roll. And they were interviewing us what it was like to be at the top of the highest selling category in vape as one of the top 3 vape sellers in California. Right? So excited. Oh my God, CNN's here. Big deal. A month later, they came back and they re-interviewed me with the same B-roll of like the lab and us filling cartridges and like us doing the things we did at Jetty, which was lifestyle stuff. And the questions were, how does it feel to be in the middle of Vape Gate and have everyone hate you? So it was like we went from literally being like the golden child CNN story to the, oh fuck, what's it like being down there at the bottom of that well? So what was even more interesting than that was, in the vape industry, it's very easy to be us versus them with other brands, but really it's the us versus them, like the feds and the man. And so we were all kind of hating on each other, all the top brands, like, and then it was funny that, we all had to come together and put together a joint statement. So you had Jetty next to Bloom Farms, next to Select, next to Stizzy. Like if you've been in the vape game for a while and you know anything about Select and some of these CEOs that have been accused of rape and these things that have horrible things that have happened, we don't want to work with them because they're literally not good people, and not to mention all the dirty stuff we know about their their vape business. So for us to have to come together and sit at a table and say, hey, this is in the best interest. And we had Americans for Safe Access that were literally saying 90% of patients prefer vape because they can use it in their nursing home and not use their housing or their Section 8 housing. They can, all the things we were talking about, using it at work. It's for people with mobility issues and arthritis, they can't be opening jars, rolling joints, hitting bowls. They just lift this one little, vape pen to their mouth and they can hit it. There's no screwing, there's no buttons. Like, it's been shown far and wide to be the preferred method of consumption for most people who are using it for a literal, as in place of a pill, of an orange pill, right? Those of us who are lifestyle people, obviously we have our ritual around it, but people who are not doing it for the ritual element always go to vape. So we have that on our side. And the thing that we all put together when we came together as that coalition of vape manufacturers were, let's look at the facts and how can you prevent this? So to answer your question, know where you are getting it from, as far as the distribution point of the retailer, and double check that their license is an accurate license. Do not use Weed Maps, because Weed Maps has been known to list illegal or non-licensed dispensaries, right? So that's the first thing. Know your source retail wise. When you go into the retailer, there are ways to check, well, the idea is your retailer and your buyer should be trained through the BCC rules, because they will lose their license if not, to have seed to sale tracking through something that we call metric, which is basically a batch number that goes from the seed to the plant, onto the truck that transports it, through the testing process, through the distribution to the retailer. And you can track that information via this batch number and batch code. A lot of people also include a QR link that goes to their COAs, or certificate of analysis. So if you're even just by virtue of you walking into or ordering from a licensed dispensary in your state, you're off top 99% chances you're not going to get something that's bad. So the buyers should be also educated about counterfeits, right? You can physically check this yourself. You can go online and look. They're a little bit off. Like they'll print a package that looks similar to the other one, but if there's a bunch of different, Blacklist XYZ, there's a bunch of different Instagram accounts that will say, oh, watch out, Stizzy users, there's this new counterfeit on the market. But like I said, it usually won't get to the legal market because they have so many gatekeepers and so many ways to actually cross-reference this through something that we call shipping manifest, that really make sure that you're getting what you're getting. You can't add things or subtract things. They do seed to sale tracking that it is like a Brinks armored van vehicle. Every penny that goes in, every penny that goes out. Same thing with how the cannabis is. So that's kind of the argument for regulation, right? Is that when these things happen, you can actually find out if there was a bad batch of something that, you know, because in California, you can have no residual solvents and you can have no heavy metals, non-detectable in it. So you cannot even sell your product to a retailer or distributor if they have any detection of solvents, microbiological contaminants, or heavy metals at all, or pesticides, right? So, you know, folks just need to kind of trust in that legal process. And this is coming from someone who's very anti-controlling and regulating cannabis. But like, you know, for this thing in particular, it was only coming from illicit e-juice vapes that were specifically for, you know, that e-cigarette juice that were being sold underground or at unregulated vendors like corner stores and things like that. And the ones that were cannabis were either purchased from a non-licensed dispenser, a non-licensed retailer that was delivering the cannabis, or it was in a counterfeit, right? So it's like, so it slipped through, but those cases were so minuscule. So really, if you looked at like the proposal that we put through to our legislators, that was like, you know, and we've pushed it through, no additives. You cannot add additives unless you list it on the packaging, and none of those additives can be flavorings, right? So all of these things, so we were able to kind of, you know, keep the baby and let out the bathwater and say, okay, if for people who actually care about health, for people who actually care about vape, for people who don't want to just do this whole cancel culture where they read one headline and delete everything out of their life that has anything to do with vape, it's a nuanced thing. And I think it goes back to like what I said initially about this being, you know, kind of a metaphor for a lot of things in our culture. Is we don't deal well with nuance. We don't deal well with subtlety. We don't deal well, you know, even just the concept of what a stigma is. It's just a rumor. It's just a connotation. Those things are created in community and through things like Reefer Madness that were specifically geared to racialize and make it about class and race and black and brown men taking white women and jazz music and all these things that were triggers at the time in this very cultural specific time period of the 1930s and 40s of Prohibition and the jazz movement and Jim Crow and people of color actually moving forward in society. It was right before the Tulsa riots, and it was like, you know, black jazz musicians were probably screwing white women. It wasn't the weed, but maybe the weed got them in the mood and actually made their hearts and their minds open. And so these things were very scary for white supremacist America. And they're like, fuck it, we're just going to call it marijuana, which racializes it towards the Mexicans at a very, very Latino time in our history, and you know, made it about black men becoming rapists and psycho killers. And so it really, it's kind of how Trump's America is kind of, it's feeding in the way Hitler wrote about, it feeds into people's fears around economic security and your life. If your wife and your job are going to be taken by a Mexican or a black person, and you can criminalize and you know, use that as an excuse to search and seizure them, that's what's led to the, you know, the prison industrial complex. So I think the stigma is just scapegoating, right? It's just using the non-desirables, because, you know, we've seen it up and down. Cocaine and cannabis are used by white folks more than black and brown people. However, they're always racialized. And if you look at the, you know, the mandatory minimum sentencing laws and incarceration rates, it's always because of they are more often searched. Black and brown bodies are not respected in our culture. And so you layer cannabis or an illicit drug on top of that, and it was an easy way out. But going back to that concept of nuance and subtlety and truth finding and real truth seeking, if you really look back at the, you know, the 10s, 20s, and 30s before Reefer Madness was released in 1937, when Aslinger actually made it illegal and outlawed THC, you know, you know, you always saw in the old movies, you see the doctor walking around with his black pouch. You know what was in that black pouch? A fat thing of grain alcohol that was cannabis indica tincture for your toothache, for childbirth, to help you with your impotence, to put you out before you know, got dental work done, to sterilize a wound. It was the number one most commonly used thing by home visiting doctors in our country less than 100 years ago. So these are the things that are our birthright. And if you look at how this weed grows and how it's been grown by women and indigenous people all over the world to create abundance, and it always grows in such an abundant way. If we really look at to the plant to guide the way we market it and understand it and look at it, it's got this very abundant, expansive mindset and nature to it, right? It's got this, just like when we, you know, when we weigh out sacks, it's a baker's dozen. You weigh it out a little heavy. You always throw in an extra couple nugs. You smoke the person out. It's the concept that, you know, they always say like the monks that walk around with the open bowls, you know, it's like they don't need to hoard their food. They know that they will get food that day. They're not tripping off of it. They walk around with this concept of abundance, that it's in the grasping for the thing that you lose it. It's in the opening and the waiting for it that you get it. And that's so important with cannabis too. It's like the people who try to like pump it with newts and don't flush it enough. It's like, yeah, if you're going to pimp out a plant like she's a hoe, she's going to be out of pocket. If you uphold her like the goddess she is, she will be abundant and flow. And so
that's why it's called Mary Jane, not Mr. Jane.
There you go.
Well,
she's a beautiful goddess.
We talk about everything you say. We talk about religiously on the show, which is what's great to hear it come from, you know, other sides of things, because like, you know, our medical markets are to me too crossover with our recreational markets. There needs to be separation. You know, we have the vape card issues. Everybody say hi to my son who's peeking in.
What up, Connor? Hi,
Connor.
The privileges from working from home. So, you know, our market's education, right? Like, you know, what we're here is try to do is, you know, erase that gray area of misunderstandings. You know what I mean? One of the things I think that we see a lot, but going back to the vape issue, is, you know, again, I think it was more integrity of a lot of the retailers, right? I mean, we saw a lot of these retailers buying through the back door. So like they're almost promoting this industry in their own right, because, you know, they can save $10 off a cart. They can still retail it at full cost. It's still looks the same, like you said. You know, a lot of that stuff slips through the hands, whether purposely or mistakenly, right?
And I don't even blame them. I mean, and that might be true because they're just trying to break even, because the taxes are raping them so hard. So some of them it is even greed. It's just to break even. So I just want to be fair that sometimes retailers are doing it because they're getting screwed too.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot with retailers and also the dispensaries. You know what I mean? You know, some states and dispensaries really have their hands tied. Like in our state here in Vermont, it's a unilateral system, seed to sale, and you can only grow for patient numbers, right? And take on their allotment, right? You know, most states kind of have programs like that. So when you go to a dispensary, you know, especially in Vermont, you have to register the dispensary. They can only grow that cannabis. So like, unlike Maine, where they can just take on patients from anywhere, everywhere, just and buy from a co-op, these guys can only grow so many plants. So like, you know, we see a lot of weird issues that our dispensaries are all across the nation are held to, that, you know, it's not an easy game. It's a very expensive game, right? You're talking about multiple tests, right? How can you as a company making a vape cart, you know, spend money on 5, 6, 7 tests? Me as a consumer,
we're spending almost $250,000 a month on testing. Most of these companies easily $80,000 to $200,000 a month on tests.
Right, and that has to go,
because it's a no-go if you don't pass. I mean, it's a necessary evil. You don't have a choice.
And Rodney, chefs out in Michigan, and Michigan has standards like that as well, where they do the seepage test. You know, for me, I want the post-fire test. That's what's important for me, because like as we saw with the vape card issue as well, one of the issues, there's a few, was the quality of the metals, right? When they heat up, like, you know, anybody that's worked with metal or hot metal before, we talk about this a lot, metal flakes, right? So
and off gases, even if you don't see it in the oil, you're inhaling it in the fumes, which people never talk about.
Right. So your product that's in the cart itself could be the best product in the market, right? But if it's in a shitty cart, off gases, you stand the issue to get sick. And you brought up another great point earlier that I love to bring up to people when we talk about the vape issues that we see in the vape game, especially in the cannabis industry, was the cigarette industry, right? The tobacco industry literally was the glycols, right? Let's talk about glycol for a minute as well, because that was a huge popcorn lung issue that started in tobacco, right? That got outlawed in tobacco. And then what do we do with it all, right? Oh, here's a great gray black market that we can sell it to, and they'll just throw it in their carts. And then now, you know, we just kind of change hands a little bit. I'm thankful for the issues. You know, unfortunately, we did see deaths, which, you know, at that point in time, you know, made it a huge issue, I think, legally. I mean, just throughout the nation, because of where we stood. You know, we did have some deaths. I mean, again, it wasn't a
but that was also a lack of nuance, because when you actually dove deep into those, a lot of those people had pre-existing lung conditions. They were already people that were buying corner store vapes, so they were also buying corner store nasty food. They were mostly low income, rural poor fat people. I hate to say it, but there were other comorbidities that weren't being discussed in that. And that's what bugs me about this is people don't really drill down into what they're talking about. Yes, there were deaths, but these people some of them had already been hospitalized for lung issues. So, and that was a majority of them. It wasn't just a few of them. Like if you look back at all these cases, they were perfect candidates for this. Sorry to interrupt you. I have to caveat
right.
with that because people just, it's rough. It's not the same with COVID where you're literally seeing like a 25-year-old athlete and you're like, damn, that kid died out of nowhere. It's not like it was pretty much there was people who make bad decisions will continue to make bad decisions in all of the things that they're doing. If you're going to buy that kind of crap anyway, and you would put that in your body knowing that it was bubblegum, bubblegum flavor sold at the corner store, like at some point, this is just, and no disrespect to anyone who lost a loved one, but like, this is Darwinism. If you are going to put red 40 and soda in your body every day, you're going to die of hypertension. I'm sorry. I'm drinking my nasty green smoothie, not because it's delicious and amazing, but because I don't want to die from something stupid. I want to have vitality in my life. I want to have organic weed in my smoke and in my lungs. Like it's part of the self-hatred that we have as Americans. It's like, it's another thing that we just don't care about. We'll microwave stuff in plastic. We drink water bottles with the crackly plastic with all the microplastics in it. Like there's so many things that we do that are unhealthy. And talking about, off-gassing, how many times have you, when you're smoking your blunt, unless you're using one of those cool little hemp wicks that are like organic beeswax, or you're inhaling the butane from your bic, bruh. No one talks about that shit. I would like a test of how much butane is going through your blunt to your mouth. So there's so many other things that we should be thinking about of just like, and just getting it right. Like, what are we really talking about? Because if we really want to talk about consumer safety, Kiva, because my best friend started Kiva back in the day, the best-selling edible in the world. They made blueberry chocolate-covered blueberries famous. They kept failing for pesticides, and they're like, what the fuck? They separated the hash from the blueberries, and they realized the hash was fine. The organic blueberries that they were buying from Driscoll's or whatever mainstream distributor that was the same one selling to your kid, what was his name? Colin or Connor?
Connor.
Connor eats at the store the organic blueberries that you guys buy for him. That was what Kiva was buying, and that was what was making them spike. The California testing standards for cannabis pesticides were higher than for food. Okay, that's how you know that this is insidious. So all of these conversations, I just want to get back to like, how are we protecting consumers in general? Stop focusing on weed. Stop scapegoating and using the racialization.
Right? Yeah, that's a big FDA issue, right? We have FDA issues right now that we talk about a lot. The DEA they're in a battle against each other. It seems like we talk. Timothy comes on the show. We talk about this ongoing issues that we have, especially when it comes to the THC, CBD, hemp. You know what I mean, with all the new hemp
and then the USDA gets involved, so you have that agency too.
So we have all these agencies having a pissing war over this one thing. And you raise a great point. We talk about it a lot. It's like these outstanding issues, right? Whether it's a health or these other things. But isn't it easier to point the finger and blame something? I mean, that's something that we see a lot in this country. It's let's ignore the real issue and point the blame over here because we can, right? And we just smoke and mirrors, right? So we push it over to the vape market, which, honestly, I'm thankful for because it did open up eyes. I mean, that market was steamrolling. Like you said, number one market easily, right? And like, we all know somebody that was buying the hot dog water, right? I know people, I've seen the cheap dollar carts, like, you literally get what you pay for. And it's hard to explain that to some people. But then
I think I think you're right though. But it is coming back because now that people are indoors more and around their kids more, I have seen that vape is coming back. So it is kind of a good thing that people got scared and then they did learn a little bit more about it. And they were like, okay, maybe I could try it again. Or like they see people going back and like, okay, the buyers are still putting it on the shelves. So it's like supply and demand were kind of fighting with each other. It was like there was no supply coming in because there wasn't any demand. And now it's like we kind of push them, like we're pushing demand and we're pushing supply to kind of, because if you think about it, I mean, really, I still am selling cartridges just myself of like cartridges that I have from over the years of like working at these different cartridge companies. Like people are still buying them from me. Like multiple people a day are like, hey, can I get a cartridge? So if I know people are asking just me on the DL to just hook them up with little side things, how many people are still going in and these are people who know that they're getting it, like that this is like either expired product or something that they couldn't, these are like the off the back of the truck deals kind of a thing. So it's like they're just the fact that they know it went through the legal market at some point, they have enough trust in it to, even though they're not getting it through a storefront, they're like, but it was, and this is the cool thing too about a lot of these, you know, underground companies, like when Prop 64 passed and not everyone got a license, everyone who was operating 215 stayed legit. They kept testing even though they didn't have to. They kept using organic materials even though they didn't have to. And they had professional world-class branded materials and online presence. Why would they give that up?
Busted.
Exactly.
I mean,
So
the
even
name
now
of the
the
game here-
illicit market.
The name of the
Oh my
game here
God.
is consistency. That's really what it's about. And so hands down to you cart makers where like, you know, you got knocked down. Okay. You got knocked the fuck down, but you stood back up and you kind of
COVID
remain.
helps. I think COVID helps a lot with this. Like you said,
Yeah.
you get knocked down,
I
but
mean-
like all of a sudden the world stops, and now
Yeah.
the beauty of everything with COVID is we're on our computers now. So I think, you know, the biggest issue is education. And obviously it's education. Like you said, we have people that just, I mean, I don't mean this any disrespect to people, but people that who will say uneducated, you know, have money issues. They don't have the funds to, you know, go out and buy something from a dispensary. So they're forced into the black market because it's still-
Convenience, for lack of a better
Right.
word. It's basically convenience.
Right, but I think right now with the vape cart market, like you said, you're seeing it come back, but where you're seeing it come back in is with stores or the dispensaries, right? Because now, you know, nobody trusts the black market in that aspect right now. So I think people are resorting back to the dispensaries, to the stores, to the where they can go do the, like you said, the curbside pickup and go grab a couple carts, because now you know it's tested. The people in Michigan, we talk about this a lot. Like you said, your testing standards now, people that are in these states that realize that these testing standards are so high, if you get it on the legal market, literally it's probably one of the purest forms of cannabis you can get at this point in time, because not everybody has standardized testing of that nature for raw cannabis, right? Let's talk about that, right? Who's testing for pesticides and metals in raw cannabis?
And what else is going to give me 99% Delta 9 or Delta 8 THC?
Yes.
Like, what else is going to get me there? And I, you know, it's like, and the people who are buying pounds from the underground market or buying weed from the underground market are not the same people that are buying cartridges. There's usually a correlation between education or work status and parent status that goes along with cartridges that is not for the same who are buying the $100 ounces in Richmond. Like, you know, like this is Richmond's like our kind of just like, you know, the outer boroughs of the Bay Area where like shit's really cheap and people are just slanging for a living. So it's like, it's interesting that like, if you're already that kind of professional dad type, like you guys are, like me, or, you know, we're weed smokers, but you know, for me, if this was a Zoom call and I was on a meeting, obviously I'm in cannabis, so it's not a big deal for me to vape on screen. But if I was, let's say, tutoring or nannying someone's kids or something, I could literally just peek, you know, off for a second and do this instead of having like a lit joint or taking a bong load or taking a, you know, there's just this casualness about it that people need, that flexibility, that type of person is more likely, like you said, to kind of be like, fuck it, I'm gonna go to this vape store or I'm gonna go to the club for that. Yeah, but like, you know, people in my family who only go through me for vapes, they'll get their weed from anywhere. They'll buy it off the guy off the beach in Mexico. Like, they're like, it's weed, I can look at it. Unless there's powdery mildew on it or spider mites on it, or it smells like mildew or mold, like you're pretty much, unless there's some weird microbiological contaminant that's unseen to the eye, if it looks and smells okay, you're 99% of the time going to be okay smoking that nug. You cannot do that with this mystery oil, you know? So it's kind of a cultural thing too. It's like the people who can afford to educate themselves and get it for, you know, get it clean are the ones that are kind of moving towards it. So it kind of makes sense that like the moth would draw to the flame if the flame was made for that moth. Like that's kind of how these are. It's like, if you want some fancy tech, this is fancy tech. The other thing, you just put it in an apple and light it on fire and it gets you high. You know, this is like, if you want an Apple store experience, you're going to have to like pay for parking to go to the mall and wait in line at the Apple store for the thing. You don't just get access to state-of-the-art spaceship material shit if you're not gonna pay $50 for it. Like, I don't know, it goes back to that materialism and that weird American entitlement of like, why do you think China has child labor and they have the worst air quality in the world? It's because your clock radio, this thing cost me $2. You know what I mean? But it cost, you know, over 100 to make it, if you're thinking about all the things being shipped all around the world and the human life. And so we're just so used to it.
Consumerism.
You know? Yeah, and also
inch television.
Exactly, Tim, right? I mean, what we're seeing for prices and costs on things are ridiculous in some aspects, but then you find like a toy that's $300. You know what I mean? You can buy a laptop for $150 now. You're like, well, how does this work? And then you have a phone that's $1,500. It's like,
Right.
you
And
know,
then people go to glass shows. I work at Champs trade shows, and people will go to a glass show and spend 12 grand on a piece, and they get mad when a gram of solventless is 100 at the club. I'm like, bro, you fucking just bought a mothership, a old school mothership bong for fucking 10 racks. But what's interesting about California is like, because 215 was around for 25 years, like, and me as a patient too, we just were giving away free weed every day in the club. So everyone's so entitled. It was like a buy one, get 10 free every day.
right?
That's all the brands were just doing that. So like for me, I used to bring 100 cartridges in with me, and I'd do a BOGO. And sometimes people would walk in and buy 20 cartridges at the counter, turn around and come to me and get another 20 for free. I mean, that was what was happening literally just in 2016, 17. Like this wasn't that long ago. It's just 3 years ago that I was giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cannabis every year. And so the patients got really used to that. And so what we've noticed is that after 64, a lot of those patients went to the traditional market, or went to clubs that stayed open illegally without a license, because they were able to keep their prices low because they weren't legal.
Right. Taxes.
But
What's the
but
tax
the
rate
new people
in
came
California?
in. Oh, it's after everything's said and done, there's like, everyone takes a cut. There's a use tax, an excise tax, all these different taxes, sales tax. It's like 37 to 40% off of what the MSRP would be, and then some clubs don't just do Keystone, so they don't just do times 2. Like if they get it for 10, they don't just do it for 20, they'll do it for 25. And then you've got 30 something percent on top of that. So really it's like the club's getting something for $10 that out the door is going to be like, $40-$50. Right. So you've got people coming in that are, newer. And so in a weird way, it's like they don't know the difference because they haven't been getting like all of these perks and all these. So like for them, a $50 cartridge isn't that big of a deal. But for someone who like used to walk in and spend $20 and get 4 full gram cartridges that were lab tested, and they're like, screw that. So it's interesting. It's like all the people we spoil that remain entitled, and that's what's keeping the underground thriving. The underground is thriving so hard right now. Like the BCC does not know what to do. Our state does not know what to do with how well the underground is doing right now.
Well, that's my next question right there, was how do you fix it, right? Because I mean, legitimately,
taxes, the moratorium, no more taxes.
I mean, you said you came up with a great issue, Prop 64. How old is that proposition right now? Like, I mean, you guys are working off a proposition that's
4 years. It's 2016, I think, is when it passed. It passed the same night that Trump got elected. That was 2016, right? Yeah, it's been 4 years. Yeah. Yep. So it was, and then it took a year. It took until, it wasn't in effect until January 1st, and then metric didn't go in until July 11th or something. So people had the Q1 and part of Q2 to kind of get their shit together. But the problem was it was being gerrymandered, and people, so we have something in the California Constitution that basically allows each county to set their own precedent against the state. It's the same way that we have states' rights that allow us to have medical cannabis or recreational cannabis, despite it being federally illegal as a Schedule I substance on the national level, right? It's the same thing to a micro level in ours. So what that means is that counties who, a lot of rural counties, they're being led by like ex-sheriffs and like people who are not super smart or educated in civics. And they're being, if you're on the city council, you're handling business and law, and you have no background in business or law, these people who are getting voted in. So instead of doing their civic duty of creating sound legislation around taxing, controlling, and regulating the substance, they could either adopt the state standards, which is what most sane places did, and then they would create amendments to make it more curtailed to them, like places like Berkeley and San Francisco, who had their shit together and really take it really seriously. And then these podunk bass-ackwards counties looked at the state and are very libertarian. They're just kind of like, fuck big government anyway. And so what they did was they just banned. So you've got counties that already had hundreds of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of plants and millions of dollars in the ground being banned in July. And for, where's our grower, Thomas, like our grow man, like homie, you would have been mortified if you weren't here. I'm assuming you weren't here during that time, but we had full maturity plants, July and August, and people were having to make a decision between chopping their plants. And this isn't law enforcement coming in and taking them down. They're saying you can keep it and you're paying a per diem of $1,000 per plant per day. And they had to do the math until harvest to figure out, some of them it was worth it. They broke even to actually just like sell it and not to kill their plants. But people are making horrifying decisions, like Sophie's Choice, the movie where she has to choose which kid to give away to the Nazis. Like, you should never have to do that.
I have a friend that actually lives in Eureka, and he was running into the same sort of issues this year. So they actually ended up having to chop their crops early because when it came down to it, the amount of money they would have made at the end of the season wasn't worth the effort they would have continued to put into it.
Right.
And then let's say he banked on it, and let's say he did the opposite, where the money would have been worth it, and then you have something like the fires come and put ash all over your shit, so you can't sell it anyway because it's contaminated. So and you have people raiding you, and also that's not to mention just the gangsters and the thugs that come and take your shit. So it's just not pretty out here, and that's why it's sad when people talk about the cannabis industries, everyone making money. Like, I've seen more suicides, more children lost to child protective services, more black asses sitting in jail while white stockbrokers are making money off this shit like madmen. Like, it's been horrific. It's been heartbreaking. It's been a total civil rights and human rights crisis in Northern California since Prop 64. And the governor Gavin Newsom is promoting, the raids, really traumatic raids where my friends are getting swept up with federal agents and people ruining their farms where they have actual livestock and real stuff, and then they also have a farm. They're taking everything from all of their stuff, taking over hundreds of acres, and there's just literal, like, it's a shakedown. Like, there's a militarized police force taking over California cannabis under the guise of regulation, and everyone thinks it got legalized. It wasn't legalized. Tax, control, and regulate is not the same as decriminalization or legalization, and it goes back to that nuance. People don't even know the language to use.
Yep. I mean, for months there, we were seeing raids of ridiculous raids every day, right? They were taking down hundreds of different grow operations, and like you said, they had a task force that did this. A lot of people don't realize what was going on in California the last 2 years now, right? This isn't something that's fairly new. It's been really about 2-3 years of this craziness going on since, like you said,
and now with this economic crisis, they're relying on it even more. So we're the cash cow. So ever since COVID, the raids have gone up. Why? Because California is not making money on tourism and arts and concerts and restaurants and all the things that California is known for, outdoor sports and all that stuff. Everything's gone. So it always goes back to, we're always the whipping horse, right? We're always the scapegoat. We're always the redheaded stepchild. It's so old, and we're trying to flip that script. And that's why I do a lot of speaking engagements like this, is like, we need to reframe the narrative as like, this should be treated like every other consumer packaged good that is, that helps people, like green tea. It should be treated like green tea, and let's get on with our lives. We all have better shit to do with our time than talk about cannabis legalization. Like, this is the fact that this is even just watching the debates and like just the way that folks frame things is like, I don't even appreciate the way that people are like, that we're framing it. Like, our food systems are broken. Our air and water are polluted. We have a toxic rape culture. Let's address the things that are deep seated in society. Like you said earlier, it's like the Western way to just put a Band-Aid on it, versus like in Eastern culture, you get to the root cause of it. Like, they look at your tongue when they're doing acupuncture, they like take your pulse, they ask you what your shit looks like. They get to the core. They don't want to know, what to give a pain pill to, because that's just pushing the can down the road. Like, this cannabis has already been proven to help, and the fact that we're being treated, and my friends are getting guns pulled on them in the middle of the night because they're growing a plant, it's just so obviously like misogyny. It's hatred of Mother Nature, and it's hatred of the divine feminine. It's hatred of people having an independent way of making money that's not reliant on capitalism. It's radical self-reliance. It's a rural lifestyle. It's people who are typically also arming themselves, amending their own soil, who have their own micro communities, and who have their own wells, who have their own food growing capacity. We're a threat. Rural cannabis-minded, cannabis-growing people are a threat to the system. And we always have been. If you've ever seen Dennis Hopper's Easy Rider, his 1969 directorial debut, he did this amazing rendition of these long-hairs going across the country, and they get brutally murdered because they think that they're like queers from San Francisco. They were just smoking weed and traveling across the country, and they were brutally murdered because people were mad that they were free, that they represented freedom, that they represented thinking out of the box. It's crabs in a barrel. When a crab sees another one getting out, for whatever reason, they pull it down. It's really sad, and we see it with black on black and black on brown underground crime and all the stuff we're seeing with everyone turning on each other right now, like
Yes.
they don't have to police us if we're policing ourselves. Like
Even
kill
our
the cop in
industry
your
is,
mind, you know?
Like right now, sadly, we've seen nothing but positive pushes in the last year. So we've seen some of the negativity come out within our own industry, where people are like, where we were friends, we're attacking each other now. Like it's a big industry, right? There's plenty of room for everybody, and that just kind of like solidifies some of the stigmas, right? When we really look at it, like we got this far, now we're cracking the seams in some areas, right? Can Prop 64 be fixed though? Is it something that we can actually, like, is it a good bill? Is it just like where's the issues? I mean, Tim, from an outside standpoint, a legal standpoint, is Prop 64 something that's even worth fixing in California, or is it something that we just need to blow up?
You've heard me say this a million times. California is a shit show.
Yes.
California is a shit show. California is a shit show. California is a shit show. I can't say it enough times. You had a fully developed, 2-generational working cannabis system. You had de facto legalization since 1999, when the first dispensary opened up down in Berkeley. And then in 2018, you have an attempt to put a regulatory structure on a pre-existing system that only a very select few with a lot of money could potentially get into compliance with this system. Not to mention the fact you've got local, county, and state regulations. As Luna was talking about, the local regulations will change in the middle of the rules. They won't work together. They don't work in conjunction with one another. You have an established black market. You have a tax rate that's so unbelievably high. I mean, we could talk all day about why California is a shit show. It needs to be completely and totally revamped. It needs to be stripped down and start from scratch. But that's never going to happen in that size. So it's what's going to happen. Let them in Vermont. Luch, come to Vermont. It's nice and easy. We got like 3 sets of rules, pretty fucking straightforward. You get your license, you're done. This is why when we were debating our legalization bill and people were complaining about it, it just blew my mind. It's just like, no, it'd be a lot worse, believe me. I think reforms are necessary. I think it's good that they're looking and recognizing that the system doesn't work. I'm not from California. I don't take part in that system. I can talk on what I read in marijuana business daily and what I hear from my friends who work in the industry out there, my colleagues, the International Cannabis Bar Association. But really, it's what do you do? I mean, how do you make that work? I think that's an excellent question. If someone could come up with a great answer for that. You've got California, the 7th largest economy in the world. It's the largest cannabis market in the country. So it's on one level, it's very difficult for people who want to be in compliance. But then again, that's why there's a thriving black market. I mean, how many illegal unlicensed dispensaries are there in LA? There's just enough people to say, fuck it. We tried. We tried to be in compliance. We tried to fit in the rule. And it didn't work. And we got screwed and we lost a lot of money, or we got taken advantage of. So why am I going to put forth and maybe go broke and maybe go out of business trying to comply with a set of rules that frankly are impossible to comply with?
And they're narcs because they make you list your place of business, and people were getting raided because the BCC publicly posted their whereabouts. Who in our business with security culture the way that we are and the protection of the way that we've operated would ever want to hand your baby over like that for them to drop it on their head? That's what they did. There's no trust. Right. And Lori Ajax, who heads up the BCC, is, bless her for trying, but she's a cop. She's like Kamala Harris. She just talks about enforcement and locking them up, They're all these establishment Democrats. They're all these just like, they're upper middle class white people. They're scared of the illicit market. They do racialize it still. She's just like she looks like a middle school principal or like an elementary school principal type. Like, she's not cut out for this gangster ass world. Like, California's gangster as fuck. We're the wild, wild west for a reason. We're the pioneers. Pioneering is dangerous.
Right.
Like,
you guys led the charge,
every charge.
It started the charge, began the charge, invented the charge. But unfortunately, the regulatory structure out there got out of control. And it was fine for years and years and years and years and years. And why they didn't construct a regulatory structure that would fit more in conformity with the pre-existing 2 generations, for Christ's sake, supply chains, supply lines, distribution, all this was worked out. It wasn't perfect. It could have used some tweaks, and it definitely, the environmental impact of the, renegade growers growing out there, and there was definitely work that needed to be done. But trying to impose this insane regulatory scheme that just completely rewrote everything, I don't know who thought that was a good idea.
Well, we're big government.
Really
The state
do.
of California, we're big government. It's always everything we do, we take too long. All our high-speed rail that we voted for when I was like 18, I'm 36 now, and they're like, we'll build it in 20 years. I'm like, it's just everything takes forever. We're still, you mentioned us being like one of the largest economies in the world. We're one of the biggest in the US. But we're also number one in prison labor. Like the reason why we're so big is agriculture and prison, and they're all built on the backs of people of color. And the railroads was built on the Chinese. Like everything that makes us special in California is, what do we export? Culture through LA and cannabis through the Port of Oakland, which comes from Northern California. Those are the two things that we actually produce. And so they're going to try to take control of that too. It's like California hasn't really earned, other than our weed and our culture out of LA, we haven't really earned any of the things that we've made money off of. It's all been from slave labor, all of it. So like, cannabis is the one thing, and even cannabis has some slave labor to it too. If you look at all the young girls getting raped, all the trim camps where all these girls are getting hurt, like there's a lot of like human trafficking that is involved in like stickering. Like, some of these companies need, because of regulations, overnight they need to change their packaging and re-sticker everything. So they bring in like these emergency FEMA like tents of all these undocumented folks to sticker for them for $5 an hour cash and weird shit that's going on like that. Like the lack of respect at the core, it trickles into all these other things. And you said it so perfectly, Tim. Like they set us up for failure, and it's meant to be. It's kind of like it's not really sabotage when it was set up to fail, right? So it's like, oh, the school system's failing kids, or like prisons are failing prisoners. Like, no, those things were set up as sites of social reproduction. They're actually doing an excellent fucking job at their purpose, which is to break
exactly what they were supposed to do.
So if you ask the Bureau of Cannabis Control if they're doing a good job, yeah, they're doing a good job. They're putting a ton of money into the California Highway Patrol to pull people over and test them for weed and search their shit, and they're putting a bunch of money into the the DEA and the feds and all the raids that are up on the farms. And when I'm talking about these raids, I'm talking about 6 or 7 different government organizations from the county, the state, and feds, and like even just like the CDPH, the California Department of Health, agriculture, fish and wildlife, alcohol and firearms. Like these are people, and that's not even including like the DEA, the sheriff's department, the local police, the FBI, CIA sometimes will be there too on some of these raids, and they're not being friendly. They're handcuffing you and like making you piss and shit on yourself on your own property for 12 hours before they book you, and then leaving you in a cell that with a non-working phone. Like this is some like gangster kind of middle of the night, like waking them up at 7 a.m, going through their phones, finding naked pictures. My girls who got raided had photos of themselves on their phone nude. They were showing it to other cops. They were like logged into their Instagrams and continued, like when they had their phones at the stations, I went into all their Instagrams and was looking at all of their messages, and like told other officers audibly about, oh, follow, this blank person's handle, like super sexual harassment, didn't let them get clothing. They woke them up in the middle of the night naked and made them stand there for 12 hours, handcuffed, pissing themselves without clothes on. Like this is 2020, homies. This is during COVID. None of them had masks. None of them were observing social distancing rules. They literally tortured, like my friends were like prisoners of war, and they owned the land that they were on.
And sadly, that's a huge issue in the cannabis industry, but that's also a whole other issue that we need to talk about again is that side of the law and how they take advantage of and treat everybody that they incarcerate on many different levels, right? With the cannabis industry, it's got to be it's got to be tough for cops right now. I mean, I don't want to side with any cops, but like you've been, it's like being a nurse, you know what I mean? You've been drilled so long in your life to go after this one thing, and now here's a bunch of gray area laws that, how do we function in this? It's like kind of like us as cannabis industry businesses. How do we fucking function in this so we don't get our door kicked in? Because these guys don't know what the fuck they need to do either. Tim, my question is on all this. Like we see this happen in California when we see more states legalize and get to the sections of a market of like California's nature. Is this something we got to worry about? Because like as we talk about getting structures and legalizing, so we can actually have a framework and a way to work. There's enforcement that's going to happen on top of that, which like when we're talking about, like Luna's saying, like they set these these unreachable guidelines up, and then put all this ridiculous policing behind it, right? Which, you know, if they just took that policing and put it into other areas, it'd be more greatly beneficial to us as a society, right? And opioids or in other aspects, like why are we busting farms? Why are we, like you guys said, you know, these, and we've seen it in multiple states where these companies try to do the legit thing. They're putting out money after money after money every month, paying for buildings, trying to have a grow sitting there waiting to go so they can get that license and actually function and make money, right? We've seen it in Massachusetts. I know, you know, Big Ed, you know, Big River, you know, 3 years he paid for a building so he could get a license, right? And as we all know, buildings are not cheap. You know what I mean? Is this something that we have to worry about as states legalize, though, and markets start to thrive and structures start to be imposed? And, you know, with legalization, we're going to have regulations, right? And with the regulations, there's going to be restrictions, and with the restrictions, there's going to be enforcement, correct?
You're the only person I know that asked a question that lasts like 4.5 minutes. So I'm not quite sure where we started that whole question with, but I'll jump right to like the end point. Do we have to worry about overregulation? Of course, always do. But the answer, you know, yes and no. California is unique, again, because of its 20-year history of formal legalized cannabis through their medical program, which was incredibly lightly regulated, worked fairly well. There was this established industry, a full 20-year established industry that now is in this huge conflict with the legal guys, which are generally corporations and those who can afford ridiculously expensive compliance. So that's why you're seeing this almost civil war within the community. You know, people have $1 million to get into compliance, are spending their $1 million, and then they're dropping dimes on, you know, the small entrepreneur who has no way of possibly being able to afford that. And that is creating this enormous conflict. And of course, law enforcement's like, oh, we're getting the info, we can go in, seize all the money and take all the property, asset forfeiture. Yay! You know, this is our modern criminal justice system. It's a cash cow. It's like go to Vegas for them. You know, it's just, you know, every pull of the slide is a jackpot. So it's disgusting, but that is a particularly California issue to that extent, because no other state has a 20-year established industry. We're all, you know, here on the East Coast, we're just getting started, you know. We have 9 dispensaries open in Massachusetts, a few more than that, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, we're just figuring out, you know, where to park people. So we're in a completely and totally different place. Now, am I concerned about once legalization happens, a crackdown on certain aspects of the industry? Absolutely. Am I worried about ridiculous penalties on small-time dealers that are dealing outside of the framework? Yes, but that's happening now. I mean, especially in terms of minorities. I mean, look at New York, 98% of cannabis arrests in the first half of 2019 were Black and brown people. Are you kidding me? 98? I mean, that's just, the numbers boggle your mind. So that is already happening. Legalization, again, we'll see what happens, how the East Coast takes this, how things develop here. What I'm hoping is that legalization will bring normalization. Legalization will bring, oh, the sky's not going to fall. Oh, this is not a dangerous drug. Oh my God, people aren't going to smoke pot and jump up buildings, rape children, and whatever the crap these prohibitions try to feed us. And with normalization comes, we got more important things to do. You know, this is why the case we have right now in Vermont is so important, being able to establish that, you know, a site of a cannabis plant is not probable cause for a search warrant. So we're so excited about this case. You know, it's going to really allow that to establish some precedent. All the cases that we've seen where the smell of marijuana is no longer sufficient for a warrant for a vehicle. You know, these are the really, really important things that the more and more we see, the harder we make cops' jobs, the less they're going to go after it. The more difficult we make it, I mean, that's absolutely right. The more work they have to do, the less inclination they are to do it. You know, marijuana has always been the low-hanging fruit. It's easy. Potheads aren't going to shoot at you. They're not meth heads. They're not heroin addicts. They're not going to break into houses. You know, they're easy. Oh, shit. You know, and that's, you know, been the bread and butter. If we can make that challenging, if we can normalize where people don't support it, we get case precedent that makes it more challenging for prosecutors to get convictions, and people stop frigging thinking this is like nuclear waste and we need to regulate it to the level, you know, I mean, it's all bullshit. It's all lunacy. It's all absolute absurdity. You know, but that's the way we live in alternative facts, and I'm following what I want to believe because it justifies my view of the world, and fuck science and fuck. I'm going on myself too, but
I love that
I
conversation.
do think we're going to have different issues here than California, but I don't see that same type of conflict between the regulated and the black markets, especially the way states like Maine and Vermont are doing this, which are much more accessible to normal human beings.
Yeah, no, you make a great point. Cannabis users are low-hanging fruit, man. I mean, we're just stoned on the couch, right? And you can't flush your plant down a toilet, right? When the cops bang on your door, so you're fucked. You know what I mean?
Try.
So I mean,
Hide it in brownies though.
right? You know what I mean?
Speaking of brownies, so I just smoked a joint and was like, "Yo, why am I so high?" Let's normalize taking edibles an hour earlier and forgetting you take edibles. Okay,
I think it is. I think it might already be normalized, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. So I just
want to know what how Thomas did at his daughter's birthday party.
I had a good Wednesday last week. It was a good day.
No. Don't lie to me.
200 milligrams?
No, what happened?
I took another one after I got off the show.
Shut up. No.
I had a great night. And at 9 o'clock, it was like, boom.
Okay, that makes, yeah, I told you, he just passed out. He was just like, I'm done.
No, but I made it until 9. I took the first one at 3:30. I made it until 9. So I did pretty good for myself.
No.
I mean, that's good. I mean, that's knowing your edibles, though, right? That's education.
Oh, yeah.
That's setting yourself up, knowing what you have to do, and making sure you're nice.
Set and setting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Enjoy it, medicate, feel good, have a good time. Like, you know, very different than alcohol, right? We talk about that, those relationships, and they're far different. As we get on this show, we're going to get back to Tim and Luna. This is a great conversation. Thank you again. We're going to turn to Thomas really quick and get his segment going. We'll come back with Timothy with some of the recent headlines that we've seen on the news last week. And then we're going to talk to Chef Rodney about one of our favorite things.
Uh-oh.
The strain of the week. And I know you got a great one coming up for you guys. So Thomas, Grower's Guide this week. Let's talk about it. Last week we learned about hard candy, which I was really excited about because again, Thanksgiving's coming up. We get the holiday season coming up, and a lot of people ask questions on how I can make hard candy. So another great segment. What do you have for us this week, bud?
This week is just going to be a simple, easy drip system. Actually fantastic for Thanksgiving. Maybe you're going away for a couple of days and you're not going to be home to take care of the plants. This system is simple, just built with a little 5-gallon bucket and a couple of hoses. You can build it for under $50. It does have to be refilled every few days, but it's great for taking a couple of days trip, or if you're disabled and can't really water as often, that sort of thing. So it's about 8.5 minutes long, so I hope I don't bore you too much.
They're never boring, man. Drip systems. I mean, that's a great topic to discuss because again, you make a valid point. A lot of people are going to be traveling for the holidays. Within COVID, we discussed earlier, everybody seems to be taking their crack at planting some plants, right? Growing some weeds. So there's ways that you guys, while you're in soil, if you're not in a hydro setup or you're not fully automated, you can make this work, right? So Thomas, we're going to go right to it. Thomas, Vermont Grow Coaching. Oh, and again, I want to talk to you about your other little thing that we have going on that we've seen the little tags and the little pictures of you and somebody else. And
yeah, so Coaching Goats. So Coaching Goats is a subsidiary of Vermont Grow Coaching. Coaching Goats is our cultivation portion of the company, where we are focusing on cryogenically curing our cannabis. So we are Vermont's first cryogenically cured cannabis company, and we're working with some hemp products right now that we're hoping to be releasing around Thanksgiving time. And then hopefully in the near future, we'll be getting a retail license, excuse me, not a retail, but a cultivation license as well to be able to provide to dispensaries.
Awesome, buddy. I just want to give you a big shout out and let everybody know that you can go find Coaching Goats with an N, right? Coaching Goats.
Yep, Coaching Goats, N apostrophe. Only apostrophe on the end, not on the goats for some reason. Well, it might have been a stoner moment.
Stoner moments. They happen every now and then. All right, guys, we're going to get to the Grower's Guide right now. Thomas Marcom of Vermont Grow Coaching. Here it is, Grower's Guide.
Hey, this is Tom with Vermont Grow Coaching, and welcome to Grower's Guide, your weekly beginner-friendly cannabis tips and tricks. This week on Grower's Guide, we're going to be talking to you about irrigation, a super simple, cheap, and easy way to set up an irrigation system. Let's get dripping. Oh, hey guys, is it that time already? You got to give me like 2 minutes. I'm just finishing up some trimming on some traditionally dried and cured GMB 77 for a strain review that's going to be coming out in December. Make sure to look out for it. All right. Now that you've watched me catch up on my trimming game, it's time to get into irrigation. Today, we've got a super cheap and simple way to set up irrigation. I don't care if it's whether you're going away for a few days or you're disabled and it's hard for you to bend over to water your plants every day, or maybe even if you're just lazy. It's okay, be honest. Regardless, this is a very simple way to set up to self-water your plants. First, we're going to need a small pump. This pump is a 49-watt pump. This is more than adequate to be able to water probably up to about 10 to 15 5 to 10 gallon pots. It will take a little bit longer during that pump process. Plants that you need to water. But in this situation, we're just going to show you how to hook this up to one individual tank. Joe, can you turn up the volume? Head set on it for our 3/4 inch irrigation tubing. We're going to start by taking this 3/4 inch irrigation tubing that we've already cut relatively short. It is longer than the 5-gallon bucket that we've got here, but not by much. So we go ahead and we put that on here. We're going to measure this right up against the 5-gallon bucket. Now, you notice we're using a 5-gallon bucket that is food grade safe. This is very important when working with this method because using any other sort of plastics could potentially leak toxic chemicals into your plants, which can cause issues for both your plants as well as yourself. Now, we've taken this bucket, we've gone ahead and we've put a small hole in the lid. That's going to be for our irrigation tubing. So we go ahead and we want to make sure that the top of the hose is roughly about 2 inches above where the top of the bucket would be. Now, this is only if you're going to be doing a simple setup like we are today. There's numerous different ways that you can do this, so please don't hold this as a tried and true only option for you to use. There are plenty of different methods for you to do this. So we go ahead and we clip that out there. We've got some nice little snippers here, but you can go ahead and use scissors or saw if you absolutely need to as well. We're going to go ahead and open our bucket. We're going to drop our pump right in the bottom. Make sure you have a pump with suction cups that has a bottom feed if possible. That's going to ensure that it's pulling directly from the bottom so that you get all of the water out of the bucket before having to re-up. So we're going to go ahead and feed both the hose as well as the power cord through the same hole. There is a power cord. You are going to need to plug this into a wall. So if you're working outdoors, make sure you find some way to operate power and choose a pump that is outdoor rated as well. Once we have this set up in here, we're going to go ahead and add a 3/4 inch tee. This tee gets added right to the end of the pipe. And then we're going to take another section of 3/4 inch tubing and we're going to attach it to the other end of the tee. Now, when we do that, we're going to make this about the same size as the top of the 5-gallon pail without actually kinking the hose in any way. If you kink the hose, you're going to run into issues with water not traveling as fast through the system. And if you have more than one tube set up or more than one watering site set up, you're going to run into issues with one site being watered faster than another. So we go ahead and we just cram these ends on there. They are nice and tight. They need to be nice and snug like this. This is what prevents you from having to use any sort of adhesive when getting these to mount together. I've never had to worry about using any sort of adhesive with this process as long as you use the right size tee with your hosing. All right, so now that we got that in there, we're going to go ahead and take a drill with a 1/8 inch bit. You can pick up specific hole punches that are designed for 1/4 inch tubing, but in our situation, I find that using an 1/8 drill bit is perfectly acceptable as long as you're careful and don't go all the way through the hose or your hand. All right, so after we've drilled our hole, we've got these little 1/4 inch adapter pieces. One end is going to get jammed right through that same hole that you just created with your 1/8 bit. Again, keep in mind, this is going to be difficult to press through the hole. You are going to use quite a bit of force in order to get it through, but it will go through. And once it does, it's going to help keep a solid seal so that you don't have to worry about any sort of adhesives. All right, so now that that's in, we're going to take a piece of 1/4 inch irrigation tubing, and we're going to attach that to the other side of the adapter that we just put into the 3/4 inch line here. Again, this is going to be just as difficult to get on here. If you need to, you can lubricate the inside of it a little bit. I would suggest some distilled water or reverse osmosis and not using your saliva, just because of the additional bacteria that you could be introducing to the system. All right, so we got that on there. Now we're going to go ahead and grab a 1/4 inch tee. This tee is going to go directly into the same 1/4 inch line that we just put into the adapter. And then we're going to take one of these bad boys. This is irrigation tubing, 1/4 inch in diameter, that has drip line and drip holes every 6 inches. So this is fantastic for watering small plants. We've got one here that's roughly about 8 inches. When we double it over, it's got about a 4.5 inch radius on it. And we're going to go ahead and attach that one end directly to the teat. And the other end is going to wrap around the plant and connect to the other side of the teat. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and add your drip line directly to your pot. Once your drip line is in your pot, go ahead and fill up your bucket. We're going to adjust this one a little bit before we use it here. Go ahead and fill up your bucket and give it a test. Once you've tested your system and ensure that it works properly, pick up a cheap timer that allows you to adjust the time by the second, not the minute, not the half hour, not the 15 minute. Has to be by the second. That way you can individually adjust the timer to properly set up the water irrigation for your plants. So let's give it a look. Drip, 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 drip. Additional tips. Don't use compost teas or other sediment-heavy waters with this system. The drip lines, unfortunately, will get clogged. They're perfectly okay, however, for water-soluble nutrients in teas. Use a small air pump and an air stone in the water to help prevent the water going stagnant and to keep it oxygenated. Adjust waterings throughout the growth cycle. Check regularly for leaks. You don't want a wet floor. And make sure you sterilize your system on a regular basis. Time for a little fun. Ready for some bloopers? We're going to take one of these 1/4 inch lines that we discussed before. We didn't discuss these before. It's time to get into irrigation. This irrigation system is super chimp. Super chimp. Thanks for tuning into Grower's Guide. You should now have a general idea how to set up a cheap and simple irrigation system. If you have any questions or concerns regarding today's segment or would like to set up a consultation appointment, please reach out to Vermont Grow Coaching at vermontgrowcoach.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram or contact us directly at 802-342-5381.
Did the conduct us directly make it into the blooper reel as well?
Well, I didn't want to retake it. At that point, I was like, oh my God, 8.5 minutes, I'm done. In the end, the super chimp thing, I had to keep that. I mean, it worked out perfectly, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it's another great segment, man. You answer a few questions that people have, right? And it's a great way to allow people who are especially in soil to leave and have a little bit of confidence that their plants aren't going to die, right? I think we've all kind of probably been through that maybe as growers. I'm sure everyone has.
Or left somebody to take care of them that didn't know what the heck they were doing, you know? So when it comes down to it, being able to set it up yourself and know what you're doing ahead of time is fantastic. And in reality, there's a ton of people out there that are providing videos on how to do irrigation and how to set up systems, but nothing as stupidly simple and cheap as that. When it comes down to it, you don't need to spend a crap ton of money to have an automatic watering system. You don't need to spend a crap ton of money to have a good grow. You just need to have a little bit of basic knowledge and spend a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, and so I think the only other thing I want to talk to you about with this irrigation systems, right, is the use of multiple plants, right, and how you mentioned time, right. I just want to dive into that just a little bit more because I think the biggest thing we don't want to do is overfeed or underfeed our plants, or have one get more than the other, right, because of distance or pressure or things like that. What's the easiest way for people to test their system to make sure they're getting the right amount of water? Is it just like a dry run into a cup, or how?
So I actually like to do a dry run directly into the plants that you're looking to work with. If I look at the plants and watch them individually, you can watch over the first day or two and see which ones are drying out too much, which ones need a little bit more water added. But for the most part, with this system, the way that I've set up this bucket, you can add up to about 15 lines. And as long as each of the 1/4-inch lines leading from the bucket are the same length, and your plants aren't, for whatever reason, like up on a shelf and some down on the floor sort of thing, as long as all the plants are at the same level and you make all the lines the same distance from the bucket, they should all drip at the exact same rate.
Awesome. I mean, that's the only thing I want to just put out there. Other than that, but it's a great idea, and it really, if you're indoors, which a lot of people are now because of the season, right? Most of our harvests are done. It provides an easy, simple, and affordable solution, right? Which is the other thing we have a hard time finding is affordable solutions. Like you said, those timers you can find. These digital timers are not expensive anymore. The autopilot makes a great digital timer.
$7.
Yeah, they're cheap, right?
Yeah.
So very, very cheap and inexpensive. Again, another great segment there. Now I want to talk to Timmy a little bit about a few things I've seen this week. Luna, Chef, Thomas, we open platform to everybody. Ganjapreneur posted an article the other day that said the IRS can audit cannabis companies under new appeals in the court ruling. So Tim, I don't know if you caught that or know much about this new court ruling, but again, we talk about legality, the enforcement, the restrictions, the yada yada yadas. What does this mean for our industry? Now that the IRS can audit our companies, I mean, is this? I mean, obviously, this is just
audit our companies. It's kind of like saying grass is green.
Right. It's standardized, right? I mean, technically, it's standardized.
I'm sure there was a challenge, on something. And honestly, I did see that headline, and honestly, it was so nonplussing that I've been auditing the hell out of our company since the beginning. They've always been able to audit cannabis like any business. If they say the IRS repealed 280E, that I would have been all over about. I'd have been jumping left and right. This is the reason we have to make, companies C Corp and subject them to double taxation in order to just give the owners some sort of prophylactic protection against 280E when they turn around and say, no, those aren't cost of goods sold. Those are standard deductions. You can't take them, and then hit you with $1 million penalty. They could audit companies, and they do often. In fact, the cannabis industry has the highest rate of IRS audits than any industry by far. We tell our clients, expect an audit. You just assume you're going to be audited. Have every record ready to go, all of your books in shape, just expect them to come in every day. And then when they do, you're not going to get caught off guard by it. I didn't. I honestly, I saw the headline. I didn't have time. We have been just, since Vermont legalized, been slammed. I really am neglecting. And I spent some time actually reading some of Luna's pieces in Dope Magazine, which are awesome, by the way.
Yes.
Really nice work there. And, but this is the typical thing. The IRS is going to take advantage of this industry like every federal agency takes advantage of this industry to the maximum amount possible until we see changes at the federal level. And that's really, but everything's going to hopefully change on Tuesday. Everything, the USDA, the FDA, the DEA, all of these rulings, all of these interim final rules, all of these decisions about cannabis and product and in use and 8.3, and all of this changes because we're going to have an entirely new head of each of these creatures. And I have a strong feeling the new ones will not be doing the same thing as the old ones. Hopefully, right? Let's pray. Let's please. So we'll see. We're going to have a new head of the IRS. I mean, it's most likely you're going to see a house cleaning at the federal level of federal agencies that has never been seen in the history of our country. Normally, a lot of these agency heads, they stay the same. They're not political. They're not supposed to be political positions. The head of the CDC is not supposed to be based on politics. The head of these agencies are supposed to be career bureaucrats, federal employees who know their agency, who don't pay attention to conservative or liberal or blue and red because it doesn't matter. They've up until now, they've served under multiple administrations and multiple presidencies and multiple ideologies, and it doesn't matter. Because what farmers need and the agricultural needs and requirements of this country should be based on conservative, liberal, blue, red, this dialectic we've all been forced into. So none of us pay attention to the real monsters. But this time that hasn't happened. Any executive agency head who did not absolutely kowtow and kiss the ring were summarily executed, their careers anyway, booted and gone and replaced with sycophants. Every single one. The EPA, the Agency of Agriculture, the Agency of Department of the Interior. We could go all day. Every single agency. Anyone who said boo, anyone who tried to even offer any sort of alternative viewpoint to our current president was gone, was fired, was terminated, and replaced again with a sycophant. So you're going to see, a massive change. And, I really think that as far as the IRS or any federal agency, we need to give it till next week. And then let's see what happens.
Well, I mean, we've seen that.
If we change the Senate, it changes the landscape for the entire cannabis industry on the federal level.
Right. Now, what about the recent appointment to the Supreme Court? I mean, is that something that we also should be worried about as a cannabis industry, or is that something that really has no effect on it?
We should be incredibly worried about in every facet of our lives, except pretty much the cannabis industry, because that's going to be that's a legislatively created law, the Controlled Substances Act. There's no real question about it. The Supreme Court has never helped the cannabis industry ever at any point. They've always said this is a legislative thing. We're not going to get involved. So solely for cannabis policy, we don't have much to worry about. Now, if you're female, black, gay, immigrant, any sort of victim of civil rights crime, if you ever want to have an abortion, you're an athist, any of these things, you better be really, really concerned. Cannabis, we're going to hopefully be okay.
I mean, I see a lot of headlines, where it's like talking about thinking it's not on the ballot or cannabis isn't on these ballots, because I mean, it's really been kind of like when we were watching these debates, we're looking at a lot of these politicians' discussions, right? Cannabis hasn't really been brought up a lot, has it? You know what I mean?
We're doing a state-by-state analysis for Hope and Law right now, so I've been watching all the state races. I mean, Arizona, it's definitely a huge, Arizona's going to be great. It definitely looks like it's going to pass this time. Mississippi has two competing medical marijuana potential ballots up, one drafted by ballot initiative, which is great, one drafted by the legislature, which would limit medical marijuana to dying patients, which is ridiculous. Montana is looking actually like there's a good chance there. Obviously, New Jersey, that's going to be a game changer for the East Coast. New Jersey's polling at 68%, and they're going to ballot initiative next Tuesday.
He's been going crazy down there, guys. If you haven't Leo on the show, go find him on Facebook, because, like Tim said, some of the stuff that's happening in New Jersey right now has been amazing, and they have full support of their governor down there. They really kind of listen to the people. It's one of the really most effective states I've seen with the People's Initiative. Really, you know what I mean? We saw here in Vermont, but what they're doing down there, they're actually listening. The governor every week is putting out some video in support.
Murphy, he loves it. And what they've done smart is they've established the framework and the foundational steps prior to the ballot initiative. They knew it was going to happen. So what have they done over the last few years? They've expanded their medical dispensaries and increased the amount. They've expanded their cultivation for medical. So now they have nowhere near the run. They did a lot of the steps knowing that this was coming. It was a very intelligent way to kind of create the market slowly prior to the market being legalized. Unlike New York and Vermont that have done jack shit to do anything. I mean, New York has no cultivation. They have 10 dispensaries that can't sell flower. They're going to legalize adult use. Oh yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen even if they legalize it like Cuomo says, which I do believe in 2021, you thought Massachusetts took a long time to come online. I can't even imagine how long, and maybe they'll let some of these medical dispensaries do adult use, but even now they only have a handful of locations. I can't even imagine how that would work currently. Vermont, at least we only have 700,000 people to deal with, and we're still going to take 2 years before we open up our dispensaries. Try to get that system going with 16 million and no previous experience and no cultivation and no real processing, no manufacturing. They couldn't figure out if they could put CBD or food into that until last week. So, New Jersey is definitely a great model of how to go about this right. New York will catch up. In 5 years, we're all going to be rocking and rolling right along. But I predict at this point, New Jersey is probably going to be the lead horse out the gate by far, because they have the capacity, because they have the retail outlets, because they are now easily able to scale up to meet the demand.
And the demographic is perfect, really. I mean, like Leo was saying, they fit in a demographic that, like, everything runs through Jersey. Let's be honest, right? It's dirty Jersey. You're right outside New York.
How many major metropolitan areas? New York City, all of Jersey, Philadelphia, Boston. You've got more people in a more condensed square, area than I think anywhere in the United States.
Right.
Maybe the LA Metroplex area is pretty jam packed too, but within that 120-mile radius, you have easily over 30 million people. So that's a lot, and that's a huge cannabis market, and that's all people who've never had legal cannabis, or very few. It's a novelty. It's brand new.
What if Kamala does what she said she was going to do in the debates and legalizes it federally and removes it or deschedules it? Will any of this, how will that bear on individual states if it's just all of a sudden is no longer the controlled substance that it's been?
Well, decriminalization is a scary term, because decriminalization means it's still illegal. It's still subject to search and seizure. It's still contraband. It still can justify warrants. It can still be seized, and people can be fined. They can't be thrown in jail for it. That's great. However, they can still be thrown in jail if it's a parole violation or probation violation or a condition of release on a criminal charge, or basically if you're black and brown, we'll find some excuse. So decriminalization, I get nervous with decriminalization at the local level. What decriminalization at the federal level would do is remove it from Schedule 1 and 2 of the Controlled Substances Act. That in and of itself, they don't need to legalize it. Just get it off the Controlled Substances Act. Banking opens, everything opens up. I mean, at that point, it becomes a lot easier to move forward as an industry. People arguing for at state level ballots are going to have a much easier time. This whole, ridiculous, hypocritical, and utterly and completely incorrect classification as a Schedule 1 controlled substance, even though it's not at all, it meets zero definitions, like it should not be there. The fact that it is still is a potent 280E. If we were off Schedule 1 and 2, 280E is right out the window, gone. Interstate transport, that can now happen. All of these all of the banks, we could get loans, we could use credit cards, payment processing, financial institutions, it would start trading on regular stock exchanges. This could actually, all of those things, all the economy headaches of the cannabis industry are all based on it being a Schedule 1 controlled substance. Get it off that list at the federal level, and compared to what we've been dealing with for the last 5 years, it's going to be like smooth sailing. It's going to be amazing. Holy shit, I don't have to worry about 280E. I don't have to pay 85% of my profit in taxes. Oh my God, I can deduct my labor, like everybody else. That would be the main impact at the state level.
But I said, ultimately, like you said, Tim, at the state level, they just basically, they're going to allow the states to do what they want if they go to that step, right? Because I mean, what we've seen so far and what they've said is, they want to see the states, just let the states handle it, right?
We've got two competing federal bills that could potentially, that actually have some chance, and that's the States Act, and that's the MORE Act, the STATS, and the MORE Act. So what the States Act does, that was the original one. That is basically the appeal to kind of the right and trying to bring conservatives in. It's based on a states' rights model. It doesn't change federal classification, but it enshrines in statutory law what has only been really put into riders of budget bills, which is if a state legalizes and follows the rules that were put out in the original Cole memo, the federal government will not interfere. It basically statutorily enshrines the current situation. That in conjunction with something like the Safe Banking Act would help. The MORE Act goes another level. The MORE Act deschedules. The MORE Act takes cannabis off the Controlled Substances Act, and it also has a very strong component of expungement at the federal level, which is almost unheard So a lot of, where MPP and a lot of the kind of advocacy groups were pushing the States Act, now a lot of people have, really got behind the MORE Act as a much more comprehensive measure. Unfortunately, when you look at polling and you look at, lobbying and the breakdown, the States Act is considered more likely to be able to garner enough support to move forward. But again, that all changes on Tuesday. Mitch McConnell won't bring anything to the floor as Senate Majority Leader. Even, they say the State Banking Act has the votes to pass. Both the House and it already passed the House. It has the votes in the Senate. There are enough senators, there are a majority of senators would vote to pass it, but Mitch McConnell single-handedly stops it from coming to the floor, which he has the ability to do as, Majority Leader. Yep. So if that changes, like I said, the entire dynamics change, the entire playing field changes, the possibilities increase, because this is a more increasingly not a red and blue issue. It's not simply, there are more conservatives who believe, hey, they like smoke weed. Everybody likes smoke weed.
Partisan support on this issue is amazing, isn't it?
If you're a snowflake, if you're a freaking conservative redneck, everyone smokes weed. This is one thing we should bring all together. We need to get back together as a country, and this is one way to do it. But it's age, it's old, it's concepts, it's not being able to let go of propaganda. So again, Tuesday, vote. Everybody, if you haven't, vote.
Yes.
I can't vote. We might be having a very different conversation next Wednesday. I'm very excited, hopefully, to have that conversation. Otherwise, I'll be drunk under the bed somewhere. Those are the two alternatives.
Well, we touched base on two great issues already, and there's some immensely great news I want to talk to you guys about. I don't know if everybody's seen it yet. New Jersey, again, like Tim said, they are really going at this with the best everything, right? The other day, if you guys didn't notice, they approved the bill, right? Providing medical marijuana patients insurance benefits. This is something that we talk about on the show for a long time. Like, what a game changer this could be if all the insurance companies throughout the country, through all the states, just made medical cannabis insurable, right? Because again, we talk about patients that do not have the funds to go out and spend the money, even with the tax breaks, right? Like, even with the tax breaks, these guys are paying retail prices that still are higher than most anything you'll find on the black market by double, right? Let's be honest here. So what does this do to change the industry? Is this, will more states look at this? This is a state bill, obviously, and one of the things that make it interesting is, even from an insurance standpoint, it's cheaper to insure somebody with cannabis than on opioids, right? And then, the after effects, like we saw recently this week, big hurrah to fucking opioids, Purdue, right? Let's talk about Purdue with the lawsuit. As much as people say it's not enough, and I definitely agree, it's definitely, the money and the fines are definitely not enough, but it's the right move forward, right? We're actually looking in the right directions now on these pharmaceutical companies who design these drugs that now we're seeing a huge shift in our country on opioid abuse and addictions, and now who's liable for that? Now they're making people liable. So this is a huge step forward to hopefully a big step in education and acknowledgement of an opioid crisis in our country. But as far as insurance goes for cannabis, what does that do for our industry? Is this a huge step forward? Obviously, we're in Vermont. We have this new system. When do we discuss insurance opportunities for our patients, right?
Insurance opportunities in regards to what? Like
medical cannabis.
Supplying cannabis with health insurance?
Yes, correct. Like that
would be great. We're seeing it in the EU already. There's a Canadian company, which Sun something or other, I forget the name of it, but an insurance company that's offering medical cannabis under their plans. And when, again, that'll be a federal, insurance is federally regulated. Insurance is a very, very, very conservative industry. Simple answer is when it becomes profitable. When the bottom line says we can do this, make money off it, and not risk losing any regulatory certifications that the insurance companies have. If we could do this safe and we make money, it'll happen. It's not ideological for them; it's the bottom line. And that's what same exact answer to hemp, like crop insurance, that was promised, with the Farm Bill, and the insurance company said, "Whoa, hold on one second there." They're going to run the numbers. They're going to find out when it becomes profitable, it'll become available. That's sick. I mean, that's just yet another example of our broken healthcare system. This is not about patients. It's not about medicine. It's not about helping people, just like our entire medical system is not about helping people or keeping people healthy. At best, it's about perpetuating illnesses so they can sell you the, treatments indefinitely. But at the bottom line, it's the same thing. It's profit. So when it's profitable, then people will get their weed.
Right. Well, I agree. Unfortunately, it's a cash issue at this point.
But it is happening in other places. So we have precedent. You're seeing it. The EU and the National Health System, the NHS system over there has approved cannabis for patients and are covering it, the cost. France is about to give away 3,000 patients, I think, as part of an experiment next year, free cannabis to medical patients. So this is, these are initiatives which are fantastic. Is it going to happen here? I would like to think so. Again, normalization, a new administration, a greater understanding of cannabinoid medicine. As we start to finally be able to do research and understand how the cannabinoid profiles and terpene profiles affect our systems. And as we narrow down specific cannabinoid profiles for specific ailments, and we can actually start really understanding dosage, treatment, and how all of these things work in conjunction. When we start understanding the entourage effect fully and understanding how it affects us, I think those are all things that are also going to make the argument much, much easier, to make for public acceptance in terms of people coming to terms with that this is a medicine.
Right. Well, we're starting to see different groups now, and people within our industry starting to do research, right? Like about a month ago, the CDC, put out there that they're going to start meeting with medical marijuana patients to discuss, what we just talked about, using cannabis as a viable medicine, right? So with that being said, we're taking strides. We just got to get into, like you said, go vote on Tuesday.
Vote.
Bills go. I mean,
do everything.
I mean,
like Christmas morning, always. I'd be like, "Ooh, what do we get for the DA?" It's gonna be. I hope. I'm trying to stay optimistic, because otherwise, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
It's gonna create a very interesting Thanksgiving this year for sure. For everybody within this industry, because we're gonna see we're gonna understand it, right? The minute the votes are cast, we're gonna get a pretty good idea of where we're going with this thing, right? We've seen, we don't talk politics a lot, but we're right here, and we're at the line where it's like, we have two options on the presidential level, which thankfully for Kamala, we're starting to see more of a support for the cannabis initiative through the Biden side, right? The Trump side, we hear things go back and forth a lot. I don't even know what to think about what their administration thinks, because like you said, we've seen things go so many different ways. We've seen them enforce enforcement. We've seen them enforce state laws. We've seen them enforce our freedoms of endorsement of utilizing this plant, but they always they point a finger to somewhere. You know what I mean?
There's no consistent policy in the current administration. It's just day-to-day impulse of who's in front of me, what do they want to hear, what can I get out of it. There's no consistency in plan or policy, or this is what we want to do, either yay or nay. It's just a shit show. It's just, I'm not really a big fan of friggin' Biden and Harris, either of them. I hate prosecutors, always hate prosecutors, except for select few. It does at least bring some consistency in policy. They're not going to legalize. They're pro decriminalization. They're talking about states. That at least is a consistent policy position, and one that is relatively pro cannabis. I mean, you still hear Joe talking about mandatory drug court instead of incarceration. No, not necessary. Absolutely not. You want to do that for like hard, serious drugs with serious addictive properties like, methamphetamine and heroin? Sure. That's a great idea. We don't lock anybody up for drugs anymore. And for the drugs that need treatment, we, help people get into treatment. That's fantastic. Not for cannabis. Not for cannabis. That's, do you need rehab for coffee? I mean, maybe, I guess, but that's not the coffee, that's you. That's an underlying problem. That's not the cannabis. So forcing anybody who is caught with cannabis into a, forced drug treatment program, which I'm sure is a for-profit program run by somebody who I'm sure administration has some shares of stock in. I mean, it's just the typical bullshit. But again, we'll have some consistent policy. We will be moving towards where we want to be, and hopefully we'll get cannabis off the Controlled Substances Act. So if those things happen, that's a win. That's a huge win right there.
And meanwhile, in the background of all this, I have all of our next job opportunities because the DEA is looking for people, a business that can, I don't know if anybody saw this ad yet, but they need at least 1,000 pounds of marijuana every 8 hours burnt, right? So 8,000 pounds of weed a day is what they're looking for. They're looking for contractors to provide this service for our government, for our DEA. So guys, as much as we talk about legalization and the steps we're going forward, they need someone to burn 8,000 pounds of weed a day. So they're still busting and kicking doors in and ripping down farms. And like Luna said, you know, what's going on in California, and like we do not talk about this enough in our industry. We talked about it for the last 2 years because we see these little headlines, and they're not big headlines. You know, people getting raided, busted, raided. People thought they had licenses after when, you know, 64 went along, and then like you were saying, Luna, all these people that set themselves up and were in the right shape and did everything as per diem requested got the shaft, right? So what do you do? What you lock the door? Do you have product? You have money invested? Like, what do you do? Unfortunately, which leads to like this black market issue. And like we said, can it be fixed? Of course, right? But currently trending, is it something that's going to work out for your industry, especially in California? I don't think so, right? And we all agree it's the biggest market in the country. So imagine what would happen to our industry and our numbers and our effectiveness if California could get their shit in order, right? If some of these states could get their acts in order, and like we were talking about New Jersey, look at what New Jersey's doing. From a social equity standpoint, everything that they're doing is remarkable from legalization steps. And like you guys said, you know, a lot of these guys slapstick our laws in and try fast pace everything. And you know, we've seen this in Mass, right? Let's be honest, like Mass kind of did it. They got they're going a couple of years, and who's losing the biggest battle in Mass right now is the social equity applicants, right? The small business guys. They're getting robbed all over. They can't get licenses, like we talked about Big Ed. Again, 3 years waiting on a license is kind of bullshit, if you ask me, when we're trying to fast and get a system rolling, right? And when you are talking about money and taxes and getting that cash crop cow, whatever you want to call it, moving, why are we doing this to ourselves? It's like you guys said, we are set up to fail. A lot of these laws are like, hey, we're going to satisfy you on like this weird aspect in theory for you grassroots guys, but in the back end, we're going to make it so impossible and so expensive that we only expect a few to make it, and those few are going to be our friends because, yeah, we see a value in it, right? It's really unique what's going on in our industry, and seeing that the other day just blows my mind, because when you read the headline, people laugh about it and say, hey, that's a great job, but at the end of the day, dude, they need somebody to burn 8,000 pounds of weed every day. You know what I mean? Like, and as a hemp industry supporter, right? You know, that's a lot of fiber, and that's a lot of medicine, and that's a lot of other things that are just being burnt for whatever reason. Why can't we reutilize and prioritize that product into something else? You know what I mean? You know, that's why, again, we need to go vote on Tuesday. So again, guys, we've had a great conversation today about so many awesome things. The vape card issue again came out of nowhere, but I'm glad we had this discussion because it's something that, you know, we've seen in the industry go from number one to like, what, where, how, you know what I mean? Like, nobody's even talking about it right now. And it's still a viable industry. You know, it can be safe. You know, we see, like you said, in California, the testing requirements are stingent. They're like more stingent than probably any other thing that you're going to buy off a shelf anywhere, right? In Michigan, Rodney, we talk about it a lot. We had Nick Young on from Crystalline not too long ago, and he was talking about the ridiculous requirements that they have to do to get a vape cart on the shelf. But at the end of the day, like, you know, a lot of these, you know, edibles are not getting tested like that. A lot of these, the flower is definitely not getting tested like that. And that takes integrity to go get that test, and it's a lot of money. So how do you make a viable product that can get hit a shelf that people can afford? Go New Jersey with the insurance coverage, right? So hopefully every other state will look at this. Now we get to one of my more favorite parts of the show. We're going to have to wrap it up here real soon. So we're going to do Chef Rodney's little bit here, but real quick, Luna, again, thank you for coming back on the show. You absolutely killed it today. The first time I've ever been speechless, I think, on the show without like being like, man, she's like right on our level. Awesome having you on. Thank you for all the work that you're doing out there, because somebody needs to be a voice. Somebody needs to stand up to what's going on. And with you and all of your I was talking, we're getting ready to talk more about PR and media and how we can get our cannabis companies to survive in this marketplace, right? But we hit the nail on the head. It's what do we do, right? We've seen people do the right thing and fail. We see people do the wrong things and succeed, right? So it's a matter of getting out this week and vote. Go Cali, right? Drop some links, tell everybody where they can find you, throw some plugs out there. And again, thank you for spending time with us today. And
Thank
again,
you.
guys, go check her out. Go support this woman, see what she's doing. Her pages, her website, her magazine articles, all top-notch stuff. And again, thank you for what you've done for our community.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to see
Oh,
you guys. You guys can follow me at lunastower.com, lunastower.com. And I'm on Instagram as Luna Stower as well, and on Facebook, and stoked to come back on and talk more, get into the weeds about PR and media as well.
Definitely. I mean, that's one of our favorite things. Obviously, this is what we
We're
do.
need it. New industry.
Yeah.
All right, we
Like-
need it all here.
The cannabis industry is going to open up so many avenues for people in every industry that I don't think people can even grasp it. Like whether it's PR, graphic design, growing, soils, food, right? Lotions, medical, and now we're going to talk industrial. We're seeing 2x4s now, which is awesome. It's been one of my things. We've had people on that make ukuleles, right? We had some really interesting people, hempcrete. And now one of my biggest favorite things is our byproduct with feeds, right? Like animal feeds. Like why aren't we processing this more into feeds, taking out a lot of these byproducts of beef and grains that we're putting in our animal food right now, so we can have healthier animals, right? And are these viable, sustainable markets? I think so. You know what I mean? Obviously, we're seeing that nowadays. But again, thank you for everything you do. We definitely have to get you back on sometime soon. Let's everybody pray, because hopefully by this time next week we're gonna have a couple of answers to our future. It's gonna be a great show. And now comes time for again our favorite segment of the show, right? With Chef Rodney. So the strain of the week, guys, one of our favorite things. We love talking to Rodney about it. We're going to talk about another great strain, right? Chef's going to break it down for us. Chef, what do you have for us this week?
Dude, I'm so baked right now. I don't remember. Cookies and cream. Sorry, no, cookies and cream from the patient station in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Damn, that edible was amazing.
you guys and these wonderful edibles, you guys ship me some, man, so we all can enjoy this.
So I may or may not, I got a hold of a magic butter machine, and that has absolutely changed my life.
Yes.
I made a bunch of gummies and they're amazing. So yeah.
Cheers for magic butter.
I'm just gonna wrap that up that way.
Right.
No,
another
we got cookies and cream this week,
right?
Oh yeah.
All right, guys. Well, here we go. Strain of the week with Chef Rodney of Deliciously Dope TV. Stay with us, guys. We're gonna sign off afterwards, and we'll see you next week. We have another great show next week. We're gonna have a cookbook giveaway. So if you guys are following our social media, I'm gonna get that all together tonight. Hopefully, post it tonight. So be Satya just released a great cookbook. It's all on hemp paper. So it's a really unique cookbook. It's going to be a really cool collector's edition. She'll be doing a tour. Hopefully we'll get here in Vermont. So tune in next week and see where she's going to go, and if she's going to come to a city near you, and check out this book. Well, again, we're going to do a giveaway. We're going to start it on social media, and we will do the announcement on the show next week. So stay tuned for that. And again, here is Chef Rodney with Deliciously Dope's Strain of the Week.
What up, Can of Fam? It's your boy Chef Rodney 117 from Deliciously Dope here, bringing you Deliciously Dope's Strain of the Week. This week, y'all, we have cookies and cream from the one, the only, my family down at the Patient Station in Ypsilanti, Michigan. That's at 539 South Huron Street in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Make sure you go check them out. Tell Ryan, Laura, and the rest of the Can of Fam out there, Chef Rodney said, what's up? Now, cookies and cream, y'all. Coming at the high 20%, depending on the phenotype you get. It's the daughter of crossing two hybrids, Starfire and Girl Scout cookie, which again, depends on the phenotype that you get. Very interesting stuff there. More to come on that. I'd want to do some more research there. Now, this flavorful fruit, this fruit-like flavorful flower, try that one again, took first prize in the 2014 High Times Cannabis Cup for Best U.S. Hybrid. Now, try saying that about as elevated and medicated as I am. I'll give you a high five. No, I'll send you some free stickers. That's all right. It's all right. I'm just kidding. Now, it can be either a sativa or an indica, depending on the phenotype. Again, phenomenal strain. It provides an ideal combination of both cerebral and physical effects. Thorough relaxation is the name of the game here, y'all. It's absolutely like just gonna mellow you out and chill you. Cookies and cream semi-narcotic effects make it a great medical strain for a range of physical ailments. Yeah, I can definitely tell you that. Like my hands, y'all. We talked about this before. Oh man, my hands feel great. My hands feel great. Terpenes found in cookies and cream. Caryophyllene, again, pronouncing that wrong, I'll learn. That gives it those peppery tinge of the side of your tongue, the peppery tinge, the pepperiness if you smell it there. If you're really in there, you really get hints of this, that pepper. That's where I want to go with that. Myrcene gives it those herbal flowery notes. Flower notes. Just kind of like, very chill on that. I really liked this strain. I could definitely tell you it had a little bit of gas in it. It really did. Limonene in certain phenomes. Again with this one, certain phenomes, limonene was present, which was a sweet citrus. Upon reviewing this further by igniting it with a combustion source, I did in fact realize that all of these were present. I could be like, hey, that's that, hey, that's that, and hey, that's that. Right to it. And it's interesting, like, studying these strains now, it's blowing my mind. It absolutely is. I can definitely tell terpenes from different strains. It's amazing, y'all. This is very, very terp heavy, dog. I'm loving it. Some medical benefits of cookies and cream. Now, as I've stated before, when taken in small amounts, it'll take care of your aches and pains. And in larger doses, it'll damn near knock you out. It also helps with anxiety, depression, nausea, and arthritis. I would absolutely have to attribute the creativity blast that I felt accompanied with this strain to its uplifting effects found, in the medical uses that for anxiety and depression. So obviously that explains why that's melting away for me, which is probably why they noticed that almost off the bat. So hello, full circle, if you will. Hello, full circle, yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely amazing. I don't think that I saw any kind of high anxiety notes of this. Again, a little bit goes a long way. If you start feeling a little bit of anxiety, it's attributed to this. Again, this is just what I felt and the medicinal properties of what I researched on, and experienced firsthand on this strain. Flavors associated with cookies and cream. I want y'all to think a nice vanilla ice cream sundae with nuts. This, week strain, I decided to smoke it, a blunt of it, okay, using my mouthpiece. Now, my mouthpiece has a filter in it, so it filters out the tobacco taste of the blunt. But boy, did I ever taste it, I'll tell you that. It was second toke, I was in pure Can-Of-Bliss, if you want to say, the coin of phrase. I can say that I would absolutely have to make this into something sweet. Definitely vanilla, very, I wouldn't say hickory, but I would say think vanilla nutty, You know, vanilla just something tasty, like, you know, I don't know, like, you know, something like, you know, like a good vanilla and a good nutmeg. Food suggestions. Now, as I was saying earlier, I would totally put this into something sweet. But then again, people want me not to take the easy way out because apparently y'all hate me. Excuse me, 2 seconds. Kool-Aid, love it. I'm a mad child, deal with it. So I would have to put this into a sauce, or a gastrique rather. Made from dragon's milk beer. Something to do with shrimp and polenta. That's where my head went. Okay. So let's do a grilled shrimp topped with a dragon's milk gastrique, served over some jalapeno polenta cakes, garnished with some diced onions and cilantro. Damn, that's tasty. Our sponsor this week, y'all, the Patient Station, Ypsilanti, Michigan. Go check them out. It's the bee's knees. It's one of the best places I've gotten, you know, to check out so far. It's my on my way to Detroit. All right, that's where I'm gonna go if I'm ever down in that neck of the woods. Okay, they're at 539 South Huron Street, Ypsilanti, Michigan. Phone number there is 734-544-9999, and they are open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day of the week. Now, just a little bit about them, real quick, if you don't mind. Make sure you peep that logo. Remember that. Remember that, y'all. Remember that. Remember that. All right. It's family owned and operated. It's a provisioning center committed to being the most service-oriented, knowledgeable, reliable provider of premium medical cannabis, concentrates, edibles in Michigan. Now, they really do, you know, when reading this on the internet, you know, on their website, you say their customers come first. They absolutely are correct, y'all. Like, they have plenty of parking, so, you know, come on, okay? When I got there, one of the first things that I noticed, and it's a very odd thing to mention, but I'm a chef and we pay attention to details like this, but as soon as I walked in, I was treated like family, okay? And that shows a passion. That shows a passion for what you do, okay? That matters to me. Call me weird, but that's, you know, I'm old school, dog. I'm old school. You know, I like that customer service, and it's just like anytime I go there, you know, Ryan, you know, Lauren, someone's like, hey, what's up? You know, and I get a crisp high five, you know, and then or like the elbow bump or something, but make sure you wear your masks, yeah. Now, my handicapped Canada fam, fret not. They do have ADA accessibility. So make sure you go down and see Lauren, Ryan, and the rest of my Canada fam down at the Patient Station in Ypsilanti. Telling your boy, Chef Rodney 117 at Deliciously Dope sent you. Make sure you check out what they got in stock. If they've got birthday sex or mandarin cake or, you know, cookies and cream, scoop it up. Out comes my favorite time. Not your favorite time, my favorite time, where I get to consume cannabis. I came here to drink Kool-Aid and smoke bowls. And I'm all about Kool-Aid. Yeah. Bruce came with me. Smoke a bowl with me. Let's go. Cookies and cream, y'all. Oh, man. Vanilla. The vanilla hits you from the front, straight back. You can like smell it, you know. Can definitely taste like herbal, like a nut, like nutty, like, yeah. Almost like a Brazil nut. It would be really good with Brazil nuts. Ooh, y'all. Ooh. That's delicious as hell. God. It's smooth. It doesn't. I like it. I really like it. All right, Canada fam, that about wraps it up for this week's Strain of the Week. Deliciously dope. My name's Chef Rodney 117. Have a good week, y'all. Peace.
Chef, you look like you were pretty lit for that episode.
Almost entirely. I mean, I want to call it my creative blast, dude. No, seriously, it was amazing. Wedding cake, it was like a good runner-up. But cookies and cream, hands down, it's my go-to for creativity. And yes, I made them. What had happened was no. I was like, yo, I'm gonna smoke a bowl. You know, we're gonna set this up. We're gonna film it. It's gonna look great, and it did. You know, editing was awesome, but it's just like there's so many bloopers, and Tom, I got to start throwing bloopers in mine too. I'm making them shorter too, so I'm learning a lot watching your videos, dude. I love it, but like I do have a lot of bloopers, and it's you guys got the good end of it. There was a couple times where I just was just like I didn't know what to say. You know, I read my script and I was like, that sounds dumb. I'm gonna try an improv, and I was like, nah, that doesn't happen. I attribute that back to the strain of the week. Yeah. No, 100%.
Bloopers are great, man. It's not easy doing what you guys do, to be honest with you. And both of you guys, when you started doing it, it was something that you know, it's an intimidating process. And then every week it gets better and better and better. Thomas knocks out of the park every week, and then it's informative. You know what I mean? We can laugh at it, we absorb what you guys are saying, and it makes sense. You know what I mean? And one of the best parts, you know what I mean, cookies and cream, like we, you know, everybody loves Girl Scout cookies, right? We all know and feel and that flavor and the effect. You know, Thomas could talk to us about it all day long, and how it grows and things of that nature as well. You know, it makes an interesting plant because, you know, people that know how Girl Scout cookie grows, it's not a big boomer, as you call it. You know what I mean? It's not doesn't create huge nugs. It doesn't have great bag appeal. So like when you cross it with other things, but it's got one of the most, you know, authentic flavors. You know what I mean? Like you really, it's a flavor that stands out in a lot of things, like, you know, the sours and, you know, the diesels and the skunks. You know what I mean? Those are usually prevalent traits that you can pick up in cannabis, which is great. You know, guys, I don't know if Luna's still with us or not, but huge shout out to her for another great show. There she is. Thank you again for coming on. Another, you know, amazing guest. Big salute to you for everything that you do and the work that you put into the industry, and your understanding. And again, your ideas and your viewpoints line up to a lot of what we preach every week on the show. Education, you know what I mean? It's easy access, guys. You know, it's easy to Google. It's easy to find our shows. It's easy to find content. It's easy to reach out to Thomas and Chef and ask them questions. You know what I mean? It's a very welcoming industry. You should not be intimidated by any means. And as our laws unfold and things go on, you know, the education is the most important part, especially if you want to invest your time, energy, and focus in this industry, whether it's on a business level, a medical level, you know, for you personally or a friend or a family member. You know, like we said, we see bipartisan support. We see huge support, 90% across the country. It's time to really go out there this weekend and get your votes in if you haven't already, and push what we're doing. Guys, I want to give everybody a quick little peace out and a little sign off. Tell everybody where they can find everybody. Luna, we'll start with you again.
Where they can find you. I just wait. Go ahead. Finish.
That's it. Just where they can find you, reach out to you, and any last words you want to say to the listeners.
Yeah, lunastower.com or on Instagram, Luna_Stower. You can also find Dealers Not Dealers on Instagram. And also geticefire.com. That's GETICIRE.com for the cartridges. But also for folks who have not already mailed in your mail-in ballots, it's too late to, so you need to physically drop it off at a county drop box. So for those of you guys who waited till the last minute, a lot of them, please do not put in the mail. It will not be counted. Also, take no selfies or post no photographs of your ballot. No selfies or photos of it, because that will actually invalidate your ballot as well. Those are two common things that folks don't know about. Also, they cannot turn you away at the polls. Anyone who tries to turn you away at the polls is committing is violating your constitutional rights, and there are ways to Google the situation that you're having. There's legal routes to go against it, but no one can legally turn you away because of a logistical error. They have ballots for you at every polling place. So know your rights.
You think in this day and age with our technologies and the things that we can do with our phones in our pockets, we can't get this voting thing, this ballot thing, this mailing, like this ridiculous technology. Right. I mean, why we spend billions of dollars on these elections, but we can't get the ballot thing.
I mean, I refinanced my house over the computer. Like I literally did like a virtual notary, something that normally takes you like 3 hours signing 100 pieces of paper. They did it in 15 minutes online. If I can, you know, sign a mortgage or like send you PayPal money or verify my identity, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to vote. It's part of the conspiracy to
It's
get
on purpose. Oh, it's on purpose. Absolutely. Yeah. Everything they do is to make it more difficult for people who are going to vote against them to vote. You know, and that's not an accident.
No.
What's amazing, I think we've seen is, you know, we've seen a huge amount of our people who already voted. You know, did early voting, who did early mail-in. So, like, it's remarkable to see that support. So, hopefully, we'll see the next 3 or 4 days. What that hopefully will be means is a bigger base of voting this year that we've seen ever, right? You know, we talk about this a lot, and like we're gonna bring out a stigma that, you know, stoners are a little lazy. You know what I mean? We're hoping on miracles to happen, but there's no miracles, guys. The time has come up. We got to go to the polls and vote, like Tim has said. There's what can the scenery that can change by this time next week, it can be huge, right? In either swing, either way. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of states in support, not in support, or we're starting to see a lot of people talking about trying to push out initiatives and ballots out of, you know, being voted on. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a huge part of the discussion like it was 4 years ago, right? You know, something that's quietly they're not really talking about much if you pay attention to the political talk, right? So get out there and vote, guys. Again, I want to say a huge thank you to Luna. Timothy Fair again knocks out of the park. Cannabis Solutions, Vermont Cannabis Solutions, that is. Timothy, thank you again for coming on. Anybody you want
or anything?
Thomas Marcombe.
Oh, puppy!
Oh, puppy!
Oh, puppies! I've seen a couple
dog.
dogs today. We're so dog friendly in this show; it's silly.
I saw Thomas's dog earlier. I was going to point it out, but I didn't want to be rude.
Samson.
Yeah, my fell asleep. She's sleeping.
Oh, it's beautiful. We love dogs. We all have dogs. It's great. And with the beauty of Zoom, we're allowed to get our animals and be at home with our families and our kids that run in on our shows. Another great thing. Thomas, again, not to cut you off there with a cute puppy, but where can we find you?
VermontGrowCoach.com, Vermont Grow Coaching on Facebook or Instagram, or contact myself directly at 802-342-5381. You might catch one of my guys from time to time, but usually you'll end up with me or my voicemail.
Nice. And then Chef, you know, another great segment this week, Strain of the Week, cookies and cream. That is something that I would love to have tried it with you as well. That glare, that glow on your face just said it all to me. So I understand. I understand that campus, right? Again, thank you for another great segment. Again, tell everybody where we can reach out to you. And you guys have another cool thing going on bi-weekly too, right?
Yeah, so we did this new thing called Deliciously Dope's Daily Chronicles every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:17 a.m. It's myself and one of my local business partners, Eric Eating from Mothers Infusions. We're just kind of talking to people that are, you know, pioneers in cannabis, like, you know, and from everybody someone that likes to consume cannabis to the point to where, you know, we're talking to people like Miss Luna, you know, people, this badass bitches that are just like paving the way. Like, everybody matters, but at the same time, we're trying to help educate. But yeah, you can check us out at thedeliciouslydope.com. We're on Facebook, Deliciously Dope, Instagram at Deliciously Dope TV. Unlike Thomas, don't call me. I won't answer my phone. I'm very busy. I'm joking. I'm not busy. You guys can call me if you want. It doesn't matter. But no, real talk,
well,
guys.
I'm busy. That's why I said you might probably get my voicemail.
Yeah, it's, you know, listen, if I smoke during the day, okay, so if I don't hear it ring, it never happened. It never happened.
First one's at 4:30.
Yeah, well, I don't cut it. It's, you know, you can call me right now. That's fine. I'm just saying, I'm also high right now, so I probably won't.
Right.
Okay, no, I found my phone. We're good. All right, cool.
All right, guys. Well, next week, I want to give a few shout outs and a few plugs as well. Check out prohibitiontalkradio.com. We are revamping the website. We got all sorts of live embedments, so you can catch all the archives of the show there as well. Check out what we got coming up. We're going to try to get a lot more embedments with our segments. Hopefully start doing a little bit more with some blogs and attachments with a bunch of the projects we're working on in the back ends that we don't really
We're doing
discuss.
it, baby. We're doing it.
And then also, there's a couple new platforms. I don't know if anybody is familiar with yet. We brought them up earlier, guys. We have the WeedTube. We can find In the Weeds on the WeedTube again with our shows and segments. You can find Chef Rodney's Strain of the Weeks, and you can also find Thomas's Growers Guides segments there as well, and all the links out to all the supportive and areas where you guys can follow, support, chase, subscribe, whatever you need to do, message, DM, PM. You'll have all the accesses there in support of our show for all the great content that they provide. Please go subscribe and support these outlets for everybody. It's worth its weight in gold. And then also one of the new cool ones is the mastersofcannabis.org. So it's not .com, it's a .org, but again, they're both just like a YouTube based platform, but it's all cannabis based. So if you guys want to find out more education, get more knowledge, get more insight to the industry, there's tons of information and shows up on these platforms. So, kudos to those guys. Check us out there in the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio and all of our segments that we do. And then next week, guys, we have another great show coming. I just want to plug this right now. B. Satya. She just came out with an awesome book. Hemp Can Change the World. So it's a hemp cookbook that is literally made out of hemp. It's a really cool piece that she's doing. She's going to be doing a big tour coming up here soon for a book release. We're going to have one to give away this week, so pay attention to all of our social media outlets as we push and hopefully try to get as many people involved in this book giveaway as we can, and then we'll give it away next week on the show. So we'll pick somebody randomly, and hopefully through all of our networks we'll get a big following of this. And again, guys, stay tuned. We got a great month of guests being booked, guys.
Go vote, smoke weed every day.
We got guests coming in from California. It's the Women's Month, guys. It's it's a support month for women. So let's get out there, wear some pink, and do our thing. And check out the book, Hemp Can Change the World. Should be on next week. Be Satya. And guys, thank you again for another great show. Love working with you guys.
Awesome, guys. Great to see you, Chef. Great to see you, Tom. Joe, as always, my man. Great for your show today. She was an awesome guy.
All right. Peace
you,
out.
guys.
Smoke weed.
Let's keep doing it. Have a fun week.